The Qianjue continent was so vast that even a supreme, heavenly venerable capable of traveling 10,000 miles in an instant would take 1,000 years to reach its end. Countless races inhabited it, and their powers were deeply intertwined. Originally, during the era when alien races ruled the entire continent, the weak human race could only serve as slaves to the aliens and food for ferocious beasts. Fortunately, after countless ages and changes of eras, the rise of a human great emperor completely changed the situation of the entire continent. The birth of this person also allowed the human race to escape their fate of enslavement. Of course, even with his great strength, he could not completely slaughter the bloodthirsty groups like the alien races and ferocious beasts. They could only balance each other and coexist on Qianjue. In the Middle Divine Realm, within the Qianjue Divine Dynasty, there stood a palace covering 100 acres and reaching the pinnacle of luxury. Its floors were paved with 10,000-year-old warm jade. Its beams were made of phoenix perch divine wood, and the ceiling was embedded with 81 night-luminescent pearls, making it as bright as day even in the dead of night. This place was a sleeping palace within the imperial palace of the Qianjue Divine Dynasty, named Qianjue Palace. At this moment, within the hot spring hall in the deepest part of Qianjue Palace, steam billowed and a warm fragrance drifted through the air. This was a hot spring pool built entirely of warm jade, 10 zhang long and wide. The pool water was drawn from a spiritual vein spring deep underground, and soul-nurturing spiritual liquid had been added to it, emitting a faint cyan glow. At the bottom of the pool lay top-grade spirit stones, each worth 10,000 gold. Currently, they were slowly releasing pure spiritual energy, merging into the water. In the center of the pool, a figure leaned against the wall, eyes closed, resting. The warm jade wall was smooth and moist. He leaned back casually, arms resting on the edge of the pool, revealing most of his torso. In the billowing steam, that body was faintly visible, yet was enough to make one unable to look away. His skin was so fair it was almost transparent, but it wasn't a sickly paleness. Instead, it was like fine mutton fat jade, shimmering with a faint luster against the warm jade. Water droplets slid down his collarbones, flowing over his well-defined chest muscles, and further down were tight, powerful abdominal muscles. 8 of them, no more, no less. But the most striking part was his face. It was a monstrously beautiful face that could make any woman lose her mind. Sword-like eyebrows slanted into his temples, with peaks as sharp as if cut by a knife. Yet he possessed a pair of narrow phoenix eyes. The bridge of his nose was high and straight like a mountain ridge. His lip shape was perfect, neither too thin nor too thick, currently pursed slightly with the corners naturally turned down, giving him a born cold and distant do-not-approach look. His jet-black hair was wet and scattered, with a few strands clinging to his cheeks, making that face look even more startlingly white. The ends of his hair were soaked in the water, swaying gently with the ripples like ink-colored seaweed. If this face were on a woman, she would be a femme fatale who could bring down kingdoms. On a man, he was a monster that made others feel ashamed of their own appearance. Yet he seemed completely oblivious, leaning there lazily, not even bothered to lift an eyelid. That's right, this person is the protagonist of this book, the 9th imperial son of the Qianjue Divine Dynasty, Qianjue. Your Highness, the water is getting cool. This servant will add some heat for you. At this moment, a soft voice sounded, carrying a cautious respect. 2 women knelt by the pool. They looked to be about 17 or 18 years old and were exceptionally beautiful. The one on the left was named by Yao. She wore light green gauze. Her features were as beautiful as a painting, and her figure was graceful, possessing the delicate beauty of the giant in water regions. On the right was Bei Ling, in a moon-white long dress. Her skin was whiter than snow, and her features were exquisite, possessing a cold and otherworldly, celestial beauty. The 2 knelt on the warm jade floor by the pool, heads lowered, not daring to look directly at the figure in the water. Qianjue didn't open his eyes or speak. He just slightly tilted his chin. The woman in green then rose, carrying a jade flask in her hand, and walked along the edge of the pool to his side. Her movements were extremely light, every step as if walking on clouds, for fear of making even the slightest sound. She crouched down and slowly poured the spiritual liquid from the jade flask into the pool. The jade flask looked small, yet it seemed to have an endless supply of spiritual liquid. The liquid emerging from the flask's mouth was pale gold. As soon as it touched the water, it turned into a billowing mist, emitting a faint medicinal fragrance. Was this sent by second sister? When he smelled that medicinal fragrance, Qianjue finally spoke. His voice was lazy, with a hint of hoarseness from having just woken up. In reply to your highness, yes. Biao replied softly. Her beautiful eyes glanced at him with a hint of shyness as she continued. This spiritual medicine was sent early this morning. It's said to be a newly formulated, soul-nurturing spiritual liquid, which is beneficial for cultivation in the Divine Sea realm. Hearing this, the corners of Qianjue's mouth curled slightly into an arc, though it was unclear if it was a smile or a sneer. In his heart, however, he couldn't help but think, second sister certainly keeps me in mind. Withdraw. Yes. Bai Yao retreated lightly and knelt back in her place. The hot spring hall fell silent once more, with only the sound of the pool water gently swaying and the occasional sound of wind chimes from outside the eaves. Qianjue still kept his eyes closed, but his thoughts gradually drifted away. 18 years. It had been 18 years since he transmigrated to the Qianjue continent. He still remembered how he died in his previous life. Although he didn't get hit by the Great Luck Truck, however, on the Blue Star of his past life, during an era of terrible economic conditions where beasts of burden employees were frequently laid off, he worked 72 hours of overtime straight to keep his job. He finally finished the project, and the moment he submitted it, his vision went black, and he knew nothing more. When he woke up again, he had arrived on this Qianjue continent where ferocious beasts ran rampant. Alien races were cruel, and everyone vied for hegemony with the human race. At that time, still in his swaddling clothes, he lay on an incredibly luxurious bed, with a circle of beautiful maids kneeling by the bedside. This was the one thing he could be thankful for, transmigrating as an imperial son of a divine dynasty. He was so excited then, so thrilled, thinking he was finally going to reach the pinnacle of life and wouldn't have to stay up late working overtime for a few measly silver coins like in his previous life. With an opening like his, in a novel, it would definitely be the setup for a male lead. But he never expected. Although his mother was the empress of the Divine Dynasty, all 9 of her children were born from her alone. Didn't this turn into a drama of siblings from the same mother fighting for the throne? Because of this, while still an infant, he spent several months recalling all the palace intrigue dramas, power struggle shows, and historical series he had watched before transmigrating. He recalled Nirvana in Fire 3 times, Yongjing Dynasty twice, and although he'd only seen a bit of empresses in the palace, he understood the general gist. Just thinking about Ming Dynasty 1566 made his scalp tingle. It all boiled down to one sentence. Being born into a royal family means either killing or being killed, because his elder brothers and sisters all had heaven-defying natural talent. The age gap between the oldest and youngest was thousands of years, and they already had their own established factions behind them. And what about him? He worried about being sabotaged by his siblings, fearing he wouldn't survive more than 2 episodes in the Taisha Divine Dynasty. So, in the 18 years since coming to the Qianjue continent, he had been trembling with fear, walking as if on thin ice, and had finally managed to cultivate to the early stage of the Divine Sea realm divisions. Qi condensation, meridian opening, Divine Sea, origin return, Dharma idol, Heaven Man, subrealms below Heaven Man are early, mid, late, and peak stages. After that, God, transformation, Divine Lord, Divine King, Supreme, Heavenly Venerable, Great Emperor. Subrealms divided into grades 1 through 9. While this level of cultivation might be considered a genius among geniuses to ordinary people, In front of those monsters of his, it wasn't even enough to withstand a single finger. If he wasn't careful, he wouldn't even know how he died. Thus, Qianjue had been cautious and prudent for 18 years. He went to the academy to listen to lectures on time every day, was respectful and polite whenever he occasionally attended court meetings, and met every brother and sister with a smile. On the surface, he was a diligent, studious, and refined imperial son. But in reality, his mind was constantly calculating how to keep his little life. He even secretly kept a survival notebook filled with dense analysis. Eldest brother sent me a sword last time, and the edge was sharpened. Was he hinting at something? Second brother asked someone to read my fortune today, saying I have a special fate. Special how? Could he be planning to seize my fate? Third brother used 30% of his strength when patting my shoulder. Was he testing my cultivation? Could the local specialty's eldest sister brought back from the border be poisoned? Fifth brother. Fifth brother has a wicked charm and is completely unreadable. This kind of person is the most terrifying. I didn't dare eat a single one of the pills second sister sent. I kept them all in a box. Third sister always says, I'm some person of prophecy. It's scary just hearing it. 18 years. A full 18 years. Qianjue felt that if he hadn't transmigrated, with the caution he'd developed over these years, he could definitely win awards writing palace intrigue dramas. Your Highness, is almost time. You should retire for the night. At this moment, Bei Ling, dressed in moon-white robes, suddenly spoke, her voice as cool as jade beads falling onto a plate. Qianjue let out a low hum and then sat up straight in the pool. Water splashed as it slid off his perfect body. With his jet-black hair scattered, water droplets flowed down his spine and along his waistline. Seeing this, Bai Yao and Bei Ling both lowered their heads, their faces flushing red. Qianjue stood up and stepped out of the hot spring. Water flowed off him, forming a small puddle on the warm jade floor. He simply spread his arms, and the two girls quickly rose, holding the dry clothes they had prepared, and stepped forward to serve him. Bai Yao held a large, soft towel, carefully wiping the water droplets from his body. Her movements were as light as possible, as if afraid of disturbing something. Bei Ling waited with silk-like undergarments. Qianjue allowed them to serve him, his gaze fixed on the distant void, thinking about who knows what. Just as he finished dressing and was about to head to the sleeping quarters to rest, a voice came from outside. Your Highness, an imperial decree from the imperial lord. You are summoned to Taihu Hall immediately. Qianjue couldn't help but frown. Going to Taihu Hall at this time? One must know that Taihu Hall is a place for discussing major affairs. Usually, I'm never allowed to go. Could it be the struggle for the throne is about to begin? The struggle for succession is about to begin. Thinking of this, a wave of unease rippled through his heart. After taking a deep breath, his face instantly switched to a standard, gentle as jade mode. Understood. Help me change. After all, he was going to see his father emperor, and going in just as undergarments would be a breach of decorum. Bai Yao and Bei Ling continued to dress him. Before long, Qianjue was dressed in elaborate court robes. The black fabric was embroidered with dark gold cloud patterns, making his skin appear even fairer. A jade belt was fastened around his waist, a jade crown sat upon his head, and he wore cloud stepping boots. A moment later, a completely different Qianjue appeared in the mirror. The lazy and bewitching youth from before was gone, replaced by a refined, elegant, and dignified imperial son. The cold indifference in his eyes was completely retracted, and the corners of his lips were even slightly upturned, carrying a perfectly measured, gentle smile. In this state, he could be called perfect. Qianjue nodded at the mirror and turned to walk out. Reaching the doorway, he suddenly stopped and looked back at Bai Yao and Bei Ling, who is on duty outside today. Reporting to your Highness, it is Xia Shunzi from the Palace Internal Service. Tell him to have the kitchen prepare braised spirit beast meat. This trip will likely last until late at night, and I don't want to go to bed hungry. As you command. After the maid-servant responded, he nodded in satisfaction and pushed the door open to leave. Behind him, The two women quietly raised their heads, shared a glance, and then quickly lowered them again. Every time they served Qianjue, they couldn't help but feel their hearts race. That face, that physique, that naturally lazy temperament. Yet he seemed completely unaware of it himself, never sparing them a second glance. Having left Qianjue Palace, Qianjue walked along the corridor leading to Taihu Hall. Even at night, it was as brightly lit as day. On both sides were carved railings and jade masonry, with an armored guard standing at attention every 10 paces. Seeing him pass, the guards bowed in greeting one after another. Qianjue nodded slightly, his pace never faltering. His face was gentle and calm, but in his heart, he was speculating why his father emperor had suddenly summoned him. Taihu Hall was the pinnacle of power in the Taishu Divine Dynasty, the head of all palaces. It was not a simple palace, but a magical treasure that could transform into a war fortress to traverse the void. Legend had it that this hall was forged tens of thousands of years ago by the founding imperial lord of the Taishu Divine Dynasty, fusing 9 true dragon backbones, 3 phoenix heart bones, and a star core from beyond the heavens. Inside Taihu Hall, it was so vast that it made one feel as small as a speck of dust. The hall was 100 zhang high, equivalent to 30 stories. Above the dome, there were no ordinary carved beams or painted rafters, but a massive star chart. There were 99 heaven-propping pillars in the hall, each requiring 100 people to encircle. The pillars were carved from 10,000-year-old warm jade, smooth to the touch, warm in winter and cool in summer. Furthermore, a true dragon was coiled around each pillar. These were enemies slain by successive imperial lords of the Divine Dynasty over tens of thousands of years, their essence extracted and forged into the pillars. In the Great Hall, atop a 9-layer platform, sat the imperial throne. The platform was carved from a single piece of divine jade from beyond the heavens, translucent white and shrouded in a faint mist. That was the physical manifestation of imperial qi. Every wisp was as heavy as 1,000 jin. If an ordinary person inhaled even a single breath, they would explode and die on the spot. At this moment, a figure sat upright on the imperial throne, his aura making it impossible for anyone to look at him directly. He didn't intentionally release any pressure, but simply by sitting there calmly, he made people feel an urge to bow their heads. This person was the lord of the Taishu Divine Dynasty, Di Qingdian. His eyebrows were like swords, and between them was a natural domineering air that looked down upon the world. His eyes were as deep as the starry sky, so black they seemed capable of swallowing all light. He wore a black dragon robe embroidered with the sun, moon, stars, mountains, and rivers. That was the map of the Divine Dynasty. Every inch of land was clearly visible on this dragon robe. Around his waist was a white jade belt inlaid with 9 emperor-grade spirit stones, each one worth a fortune. On his feet were black dragon boots, with a night-luminescent pearl the size of a dragon's eye set into each toe. Those were dragon eyes, the eyes of real great emperor realm true dragons, refined into pearls after their death. Beside Di Qingdian sat a woman so beautiful she didn't seem mortal. Her skin was as white as snow, yet it had a faint pink tint like peach blossoms in March. Her face was a standard oval shape with soft lines and no sharp edges. Her forehead was full and smooth, like the bright moon in the sky. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains shrouded in mist, neither thick nor thin, just perfect. The ends of her brows were slightly upturned, carrying a trace of a faint smile. She wore a moon-white phoenix robe embroidered with a scene of 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. Every bird was lifelike, and every feather was woven from actual phoenix feathers. The phoenix robe trailed 3 feet behind her, spreading beneath the seat like flowing moonlight. This person was the Empress of the Divine Dynasty, Empress Yue Xinyi. Into this magnificent and pressure-filled hall, a eunuch wearing a black robe with gold trim hurriedly entered. "Your Majesty, the 9th prince has arrived." Di Qingdian didn't even spare him a glance, only giving a faint grunt of acknowledgement. After bowing, the eunuch withdrew. Tap, tap. Following that, the sound of footsteps echoed within Taihu Hall. The newcomer was indeed Qianjue. He walked into the hall with lowered eyelids, his peripheral vision quickly scanning the surroundings. He saw his father emperor sitting majestically on the dragon throne, and his imperial mother sitting to the side with a smile on her face. Even though there were only the three of them in Taihu Hall, for some reason, he felt the atmosphere was a bit strange. Your son pays respects to F.A. Father Emperor, Imperial Mother. Qianjue came before the high platform and bowed to the two of them, his voice trembling slightly. Empress Yue Shunyi and Di Qingyan shared a look, and finally, the latter spoke first. Jure, do you know why I've summoned you at this time? Facing his father Emperor's inquiry, although Qianjue had his suspicions, he didn't dare to voice his thoughts. After all, no monarch wants their subjects to presume to guess their mind, even if it is their own offspring. For the sake of his own longevity, he showed no abnormality and bowed, saying, in response to Father Emperor, your son does not know. Seeing their child being so cautious even before his parents, Empress Yue Shunyi and the other felt a momentary pang of self-reproach. Di Qingyan let out a long breath, his gaze falling on a jade slip on the golden desk in front of him. Buzz. The jade slip was pulled by an invisible force. Then it floated up and flew toward Qianjue. As the jade slip hovered in front of Qianjue, his father Emperor's voice rang out. Open it and see. Hearing this, Qianjue took the jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. The next second, his brow furrowed slightly. This was because there were only a few words on the jade slip. The monarch Xiaoyou's sole true disciple, Jiang Lingshan, will leave the island for experience in 3 days. Seeing this content, he looked up at his father Emperor, puzzled. What is the meaning of this? Many years ago, I made an agreement with the monarch Xiaoyou. His successor must marry an imperial son of my Taishu Divine Dynasty. Of course, the prerequisite is that the other party can take a fancy to one of my many offspring. Now, several of your elder brothers have their own factions, and you're already 18. It's time you had your own power base. Therefore, this marriage alliance is most suitable for you. Di Qingyan slowly rose from the imperial throne, hands behind his back, and walked down the 9-layered platform to stand before Qianjue. At this moment, he lacked the majesty of an imperial lord and displayed only the posture a father should have. Jure, if you enter into a marriage alliance with this woman, along with the monarch Xiaoyou behind her, it will be of great benefit not only to your safety, but to the entire Taishu Divine Dynasty for the next 10,000 years. I have already sent word for you, arranging for you to go and receive her from the island. Although the journey passes through the blazing demon forest, which is difficult for you to set foot in with your current cultivation, I will arrange for people to protect you on the way. You must perform well and be sure to win her over. The monarch Xiaoyou, a hidden expert of the continent. Legend had it that his strength was already in the emperor realm tens of thousands of years ago, and even his father had to call him senior upon meeting him. And his sole true disciple, he was being told to win her over? Father Emperor, are you sending me for a marriage alliance? Qianjue's voice was trembling. Di Qingyan thought it was due to happiness and nodded with a gratified look. Smart. No, Father Emperor, your son is only 18. I had already met your imperial mother when I was 18. Your son has never met her. You'll get to know her once you meet. Your son doesn't want to. Hearing this, Di Qingyan's face darkened. Di Qianjue, this is my imperial decree. Di Qianjue opened his mouth, but ultimately didn't dare say anything more. Beside them, Empress Yue Shunyi finally spoke. Jure, for these 18 years, you have acted refined, gentle, and well-behaved, but in reality, you are cautious and meticulous. Your mother can see it. You are worried about your brothers and sisters, worried that they might harm you for the sake of the throne. MHM. The moment Empress Yue Shunyi said this, Di Qianjue suddenly looked up at his mother. Seeing no abnormality on her face, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Just as Qianjue was about to argue, before he could speak, his mother's voice came again. "You are all my flesh and blood. I do not wish for any of you to be harmed." Of course, your mother also doesn't believe they would do something to harm their brother. I also know that even if I say this, you won't believe it. Therefore, the marriage alliance with the monarch Xianxia disciple can be considered a sense of security given to you by your father emperor. After all, the monarch Qianjue is one of the top experts of the human race. Although he doesn't belong to any faction, if you marry his disciple, he will be my son's greatest reliance besides the Divine Dynasty. At this point, Empress Yue Shunyi paused, a doting look appearing on her beautiful face. I believe that with my son's heaven-defying peerless looks, winning her over shouldn't be a problem. Empress Yue Shunyi had wanted to say Qianjue talent was heaven-defying, but remembering her other 8 children were all stronger than him in talent, she quickly changed her words. Ever since his mother exposed his disguise, Qianjue's heart had been unable to calm down for a long time. He never expected that the disguise he thought was flawless had long been seen through by his parents. They just hadn't revealed it. He kept his head down, thinking of how to explain, when Qianjue's overbearing voice came again. "Zhuer, the entire Divine Dynasty belongs to my D clan. At home, you should release your true nature. No one dares to gossip. Besides, you are my Qianjue's son. Even if you brothers want to compete, it should be done openly and fairly. There's no need to live so exhaustingly. You must remember, all strength comes from being powerful yourself. Cultivate well." As soon as he finished speaking, Qianjue and Empress Yue Shunyi disappeared from Taihu Hall. Qianjue kept his head down, clutching the jade, slipped tightly, and slowly backed out of the hall. The moment he stepped out of Taihu Hall, he looked up at the gray sky, feeling somewhat like crying but having no tears. Phew! Qianjue let out a long breath, feeling more relaxed than ever before. Since everything has been brought into the open, I no longer need to live as I did before. I, an imperial son of the Taishu Divine Dynasty, am now being forced into a blind date. Just as Qianjue was hesitating about whether to accept this arrangement, a crisp mechanical voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Ding! Qianjue's whole body shook. This voice, could it be? Congratulations to the host for awakening the soft rice value system. Nervous and excited, Qianjue had finally seen the long-awaited system. But when he heard it was the soft rice system, a wave of inexplicable anger rushed straight to his head. FCK, this is a world of practitioners where ferocious beasts are brutal and alien races run rampant. Moreover, I am the imperial son of the Taishu Divine Dynasty. You give me a soft rice system? Do you damn well think I'm still on Blue Star? What's the point of having a system like you? Qianjue, who had already been suppressing a nameless fire in the Taihu Hall, completely exploded at this moment. Ding! Host, please do not compare this system with those inferior species. This system is a supreme existence of the universe and can help the host become the king of soft rice in thousands of universes. Are you sure you don't need it? After venting, Qianjue didn't believe the system's words at all. However, thinking that he had lived safely for 18 years without a system, and now that such a chicken rib had come along, perhaps in the future, this system would be a seasoning for his life. Therefore, he didn't hold any hope for the system's appearance and made an indifferent sound. Since you've awakened, then just stay there. Saying that, he walked toward his Qianjue palace. Before he had gone a few steps, the system's voice sounded again. Ding! Host, do you want to hear about this system's abilities? Qianjue didn't stop and said nonchalantly, say it if you want to. His meaning was clear. You say your piece, but the abilities won't be of much use to me anyway. Because in Qianjue's concept, a soft rice system might have been able to carry him on his former Blue Star. But in the world of practitioners, he wasn't optimistic at all. And these words of his seemed to pique the system's competitive spirit. Ding! This system is the most noble and powerful soft rice value system. As long as the host binds with a powerful partner and relies on her, you can obtain soft rice value. The use of soft rice value is for lucky draws within the system. Rewards include various items and resources, such as constitution, cultivation, techniques, magical treasures, medicinal pills, etc. As long as there is enough soft rice value, even the servants of emperor-level powerhouses can be drawn. If luck is good, it is not impossible for the host to become the ruler of the myriad worlds in the universe overnight. What? When the system said it could make him the ruler of the myriad worlds, Qianjue finally couldn't help but stop his footsteps. System, are these words true? Ding. Host, besides your status as the imperial son of the Qianjue Divine Dynasty, what else do you have that is worth this system deceiving you for? The system was so direct that it made Qianjue a bit embarrassed. But thinking about it, since he traveled to this world, besides his status as an imperial son and his negligible cultivation, what else was worth others deceiving him for? But for the sake of his pitiful self-esteem, Qianjue still spoke up. System, you've gone too far. Ding. Host, you were just a corporate slave in your past life. Did changing your status in this life give you a sense of superiority? You, a bit exasperated, Qianjue wanted to retort. After all, he was the imperial son of the Divine Dynasty. No matter how poor he was, he had a family to rely on. But when he thought of his father emperor's last words, if you want to fight, do it openly and honorably, he swallowed the words he wanted to say. Because his 8 brothers and sisters from the same mother were nearly 10,000 years older than him, with the smallest gap being over 1,000 years. Not to mention their heaven-defying talent. Even their cultivation time was incomparable to his mediocre body. So at this moment, he really couldn't find where his superiority lay. If he didn't have any fortuitous encounters, he could never dream of surpassing them in this lifetime. At the thought of this, Qianjue's expression became somewhat unsightly. Seeing him like this, the system felt it had achieved the desired effect and continued to speak. So host, you must believe in this system. Eating soft rice is not shameful. With this system's help, when you become the supreme ruler, who would dare to mock you? At that time, you will be an existence that all living beings cannot look up to. They will only have worship and awe for you. Qianjue clenched his fists, and the currents of the divine sea realm surged from his body. Indeed, in this world, only being strong oneself is the absolute truth. Who would care about the process? Who remembers those peerless geniuses who fell during their growth? While some who did every bad deed imaginable, but eventually became a generation of heroes, which one of them isn't respected? So, as long as I can become stronger, what does it matter if I, this imperial son, eat soft rice? Having figured it out, Qianjue walked toward the Qianjue palace again, not forgetting to ask while walking. System, since you are so powerful, shouldn't my novice gift pack be distributed now? Ding. Because the host has not yet bound a partner, the novice gift pack cannot be distributed yet. Haven't bound a partner yet? At this time, Qianjue had already returned to the Qianjue palace, and Bai Yao and Bei Ling came to greet him. Your Highness, the spirit beast meat is ready. Would you like to dine now? Bei Ling's words caused his gaze to sweep back and forth between the two of them, and then the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Look, aren't there 2 right here? Bind them for me. For the sake of the novice gift pack, and also to verify if the system was truly that powerful, he set his sights on Bai Yao and Bei Ling Ding, detecting whether the 2 women in front of the host meet the binding conditions. Character, Bai Yao race, human background, made raised by the human emperor's constitution, would attribute heavenly spirit body appearance. 8.5 points cultivation. Peak heavenly human realm character. Bei Ling race, human background, made raised by the human emperor's constitution. Water attribute heavenly spirit body appearance. 8.7 points cultivation. Complete heavenly human realm comprehensive judgment. Both women, regardless of status, constitution, or cultivation, do not meet the requirements. For the host partner, Qianjue looked at the information displayed on the virtual screen and opened his mouth. Whoa, there are actually requirements. System, then what are the standards for binding a partner? Ding. What this system refers to are powerful partners. These two are both existences that rely on the host. How can I give you soft rice to eat? All right. Qianjue rubbed his nose awkwardly. Seeing that he hadn't responded for a long time, Bei Ling and Bai Yao looked at each other, and the latter asked with some concern, "Your Highness, what's wrong?" Qianjue, having finished his communication with the system, finally reacted. "Oh, nothing. Since the spirit beast meat is ready, let's eat." "Yes." The two women responded and withdrew, while Qianjue went to his bedchamber to wait. Not long after, Bai Yao and Bei Ling came in carrying spirit beast meat that was rich in spiritual energy and overflowing with fragrance. After filling his stomach, Qianjue was very sleepy. After a simple wash, he went to sleep. Noon the next day, Qianjue Palace welcomed a visitor. It was an elderly man dressed in a purple-gold mystical robe. The fabric was woven from 10,000-year ice silkworm silk, embroidered with the sun, moon, stars, mountains, and rivers. Every line was outlined with gold and silver thread, possessing a restrained brilliance. Around his waist was a 9-turn exquisite belt, and on his feet were flowing cloud, star-treading boots. His hair was white as a crane's feathers and silver silk, tied up with a purple-gold crown. His face was thin, with wrinkles like knife carvings, and his eyebrows and beard were entirely white, hanging down to his chest. His eyes were half closed, with occasional flashes of light escaping from the slits like stars falling into the sea. Taoist rhythms flowed around him, giving him an air of natural authority without needing to show anger. This person was the imperial preceptor of the Taishu Divine Dynasty, imperial teacher Guchun. When Di Qinian was still a child, the previous imperial lord had arranged for imperial teacher Guchun to be his teacher. After Di Qinian succeeded to the imperial throne, he conferred the title of imperial preceptor upon imperial teacher Guchun and entrusted him with the education of all 9 of his children. Because Di Qianjue was a transmigrator, he was born with independent thoughts. He had always behaved elegantly and respectfully toward his teacher, earning him a great deal of affection from imperial teacher Guchun. Thus, upon hearing that Di Qianjue was going out, and specifically to Xiaoyou Island to pick up the monarch Xiao only disciple, he had rushed over in a hurry. When he arrived at Qianjue Palace and saw Bai Yao and Bei Ling, he asked expressionlessly, "Where is the 9th prince?" In reply to the imperial preceptor, His Highness went to sleep late last night and has not yet awakened. Does this servant need to wake him? Just as Bei Ling finished speaking, before imperial teacher Guchun could respond, a voice rang out. "No need, this prince is already awake." Di Qianjue's lazy voice drifted from the room, followed by the door opening. He appeared wearing a loose white undergarment, his ink-black hair scattered casually, his eyes squinting slightly against the strong light. "The imperial preceptor is here?" Bei Ling served tea. As he spoke, Di Qianjue walked toward the pavilion by the courtyard lake. These actions left imperial teacher Gu Chun extremely surprised. His gaze followed the youth's movements as he thought to himself, Is this still the 9th prince I know?" Indeed, the Di Qianjue of the past had been very concerned with his image in front of him, always humble and polite. But now, he arrived at the stone table in the pavilion and saw Di Qianjue sitting down while resting one foot on a nearby stone stool, his hands continuously rubbing his temples. He assumed Di Qianjue had been provoked by something last night, causing the previously gentle and refined prince to become like this. Imperial teacher Gu Chen's eyelid twitched, and he asked in a stern voice tinged with confusion, "Your Highness, you are—" But before he could finish, Di Qianjue interrupted him. "I know what the imperial preceptor wants to ask." He stood up, stretched, and walked to the lakeside with his hands behind his back, gazing at the calm surface of the water. "From today onward, this prince will no longer pretend. I want to be myself. These 18 years have been too exhausting." Upon hearing this, imperial teacher Gu Chun frowned slightly, then seemed to realize something. "Your Highness, did the imperial lord arrange a political marriage for you last night?" Oh, the imperial preceptor knows of this too. Qianjue turned his head, his narrow phoenix eyes arching slightly. Facing this expression, imperial teacher Gu Chen's face looked a bit unnatural, but out of his affection for the ninth imperial son, he gritted his teeth. If your highness is unwilling, this old official is willing to go and plead with the imperial lord to cancel this marriage. No need. My father emperor is right. All strength comes from one's own power. Though I am an imperial son of the Taishu Divine Dynasty, with my mediocre aptitude, it will be difficult to achieve much in the future. I might as well accept this marriage. After all, she is the disciple of the monarch Xianxia. Won't this prince have an extra backer in the future? Qianjue sat back down at the stone table. Bei Ling brought the tea, and after serving both of them, she quietly withdrew. Seeing him say so much, imperial teacher Gu Chun found himself unable to argue for a moment. He sat down next to Qianjue, looking at him with some heartache. He understood the imperial lord's intentions. Among the 9 imperial sons, only the one before him had mediocre aptitude. Without a fortuitous encounter, he would likely have no chance at the throne. Regardless of which of the other 8 imperial sons succeeded the throne in the future, with the connection to the monarch Xianxia, his safety would undoubtedly be guaranteed. Thinking of this, imperial teacher Gu Chun took a sip of tea and asked with concern, "When do you set out?" Hearing this, Qianjue drained his tea in one gulp, his expression showing complete relaxation as he spoke slowly. Last night, Father Emperor said she would leave the island in 3 days. It's quite a distance from here, so I will depart tomorrow morning. Imperial teacher Gu Chun sighed deeply. Since you're going out, you should be aware of the situation outside. As these words were spoken, Qianjue looked at him with a hint of anticipation. Imperial teacher Gu Chun unhurriedly refilled their tea and then began to explain. The Middle Divine Realm is the habitat of the human race and is also the territory governed by the Divine Dynasty. Although the Taishu Divine Dynasty is the strongest human force, those clans and sects that have existed for tens of thousands of years have been developing their own power ever since they broke away from the dynasty. The strength of these forces is no longer weak. They could be considered top-tier powers. This old official will now tell you the names of these sections. You only need to be on guard against them. After all, out of fear of the dynasty's power, they will not move against you without cause. These forces are the Wuxi Dao Palace, Xianxia Palace, Jiaoyo Demon Palace, Xuanian Sword Sect, Beast Toming Hall, and Burning Heaven Valley. After naming these sects, Imperial teacher Gu Chun took a sip of tea and continued. Next are the great clans. This old official won't list the insignificant ones, but those with ambition and great power are the Jian Yi family, the Yuan family of the north, the Eastern Murung family, the West Mountain Dugu family, and the Tianshan Xuanyuan clan. Since the first 4 broke away from the dynasty, as their families grew larger by the day, they developed the ambition to overthrow the dynasty and replace it. The imperial lord has long known of their ambitions. However, considering they're all humans, if he were to act against them, it would cause internal strife and allow alien races to take advantage. Therefore, for the safety of the human race, the imperial lord has temporarily given up on suppressing these clans. But the clans do not care for such things. They have actually reached their hands into the Divine Dynasty. The news of your trip to Xiaoyo Island has likely already spread. After all, the monarch Xiaoyo is one of the top experts of the human race. If he forms a marriage alliance with the Divine Dynasty, their chances will be even slimmer. Therefore, Your Highness, on this journey, they will try to interfere or even assassinate me. Before Imperial teacher Gu Chun could finish, Qianjue interrupted him and voiced his own guess. Imperial teacher Gu Chun nodded slightly and then continued. But Your Highness, rest assured, the Imperial Lord has never taken them seriously. They are merely a bunch of jumping clowns. Since he is letting you go, I believe he has already made arrangements. Qianjue did not speak, but pondered privately. Of course, he wasn't worried about his own safety because his father emperor had already said last night that he would arrange for someone to accompany him. Furthermore, his father emperor hadn't even mentioned the matter of the clans. It seemed that in his eyes, their actions were indeed, just as the imperial preceptor said, nothing more than clowns. Thinking of this, Qianjue put away his thoughts, stood up, and bowed to imperial teacher Gu Chun. "Thank you, imperial preceptor, for informing me of these things." Seeing this, imperial teacher Gu Chun hurriedly stood up and supported his hands. "Ninth Prince, you are too polite. You are this old official student. Telling you these things is my duty. Moreover, among your siblings, even though the other 8 imperial sons have unparalleled aptitude, this old official favors you the most." On this point, Qianjue knew he wasn't lying. After all, over the past dozen years, he had deeply felt the man's kindness. At this moment, Qianjue looked at him with gratitude. Seeing that he had said all he needed to, imperial teacher Gu Chun spoke up. "Your Highness, this old official has disturbed you for a long time and should take his leave. But before I go, I want to remind you once more. Your journey this time is outside the Middle Divine Realm. Although Xianxia Island is not alien territory, the blazing demon forest you must pass through is filled with many fierce beasts. You must ensure your own safety. Rest assured, imperial preceptor, no matter how incompetent I am still my father emperor's offspring. I believe he would not place me in danger." Hearing this, imperial teacher Gu Chun thought it made sense. The imperial lord was a protective father. How could he let his son encounter danger? He said no more and left Qianjue Palace. Watching his departing figure, Qianjue couldn't help but sigh. Since the entire Divine Dynasty views me as someone with no chance at the throne, I can only fulfill the system's wish and live off a woman to the very end. I just hope that she can meet the system's binding requirements." Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, the next morning arrived. Qianjue rose early. Once Bai Yao and Bai Ling finished attending to his morning grooming, he stepped out of Qianjue Palace. Since he was going on a blind date, after all, he had dressed himself with meticulous care. Today, he wore no jade crown. His waterfall-like long hair draped over his shoulders, with the strands from his temples tied at the back of his head by a single purple silk ribbon, while a few stray locks fell casually across his forehead. Over a long robe of white fading into blue, he wore a star-patterned cloak with a high collar, giving him an air that was both noble and elegantly refined. At this moment, an exquisite and luxurious jade carriage was parked at the main gate of Qianjue Palace. The jade carriage was pulled by 5 crimson-flamed golden lions as sturdy as oxen, and the aura they radiated was terrifyingly potent. The moment Qianjue stepped out of the main gate, 2 streaks of light suddenly appeared, manifesting into 2 figures before him. One had a physique as burly as an iron tower, with broad shoulders and a thick waist. His face was square and rugged, his cheekbones high and sharp like knife carvings, and his skin was bronze. 3 hideous claw scars marked his right cheek. His thick eyebrows were like ink, and his tiger-like eyes gleamed with a chilling light, exuding a natural sense of authority without even needing to be angry. He wore a suit of black iron heavy armor, each plate as dark as ink and inscribed with complex defensive formations. 2 ferocious wolf heads were cast onto the shoulder guards, their eyes inlaid with blood jade, hinting at a latent killing intent. Behind him, a crimson cloak snapped in the wind, bearing a large, golden-stitched character for Xuan that shone brilliantly in the sunlight. The other man was as tall and slender as a pine tree, with facial features as exquisite as a sculpture. Had it not been for his prominent Adam's apple, he might have been mistaken for a stunning woman at first glance. He wore a white jade crown adorned with a silver feather over a foot long, said to be refined from the tail feather of the saint beast, the white tiger. Around his waist was a silver thread python belt, and he wore white boots with gold patterns and slightly upturned toes. On the snow-white cloak behind him, a lifelike winged white tiger was embroidered with silver thread. It seemed to shimmer with the wind, as if it might leap off the fabric to devour someone at any moment. Your servant, Marquis Qianjue, Xuanming. Your servant, Marquis Hui, Beixia, have come by order of the imperial lord to escort the ninth imperial son to Xianxia Island. Facing their salutation, Qianjue was momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected that the escort his father emperor mentioned would actually be Marquis Qianjue and Marquis Hui. One must know that they were among the 5 great war marquises of the God dynasty. Each possessed unfathomable strength and commanded an entire legion. Marquis Qianjue, Xuanming, was at the 8th level of the sovereign realm, with combat power roughly equivalent to someone newly entered into the heavenly venerable realm. His Qianjue army possessed extremely strong defenses. In his past life's ancient times, they would have been the vanguard force for storming cities and seizing territory. As for Marquis Hui, Beixia, his cultivation was at the 9th level of the sovereign realm, and his combat power reached the 3rd level of the supreme heavenly venerable realm. He commanded the Bay Tiger Army, a legion of slaughter known for the saying, "Where the white tiger passes, not a blade of grass remains." And yet now, the commanders of these 2 great legions were being sent to escort me on a blind date. As the imperial son the God dynasty looked upon with the least favor, he felt somewhat overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. Qianjue looked at the 2 of them and gave a slightly awkward smile. Hee. Well, the 2 marquises may rise. After Xuanming and Beixia stood up, their eyes fell upon Qianjue. They couldn't understand why the imperial lord would send them to escort him. They had heard it was for a blind date. To have 2 great war marquises escort him for such a trivial matter, and for the 9th imperial son, whom the entire court looked down upon. Wasn't this a massive waste of talent? However, no matter how reluctant they were, it was an order from the imperial lord, and they had to obey. Rumble. Just then, a series of muffled, thunder-like sounds rang out, making the very earth tremble. In the distance, dust rose everywhere. At first, it was just a black line spanning the horizon, like ink slowly bleeding into rice paper. But soon, that black line transformed into a torrent of iron black, sweeping forward with the momentum of an overwhelming tidal wave. This was the Qianjue army. Though there were only 100 riders, they marched with the momentum of 10,000 horses. Every one of them was burly. Even while seated, they were taller than an average man standing. They wore black iron-heavy armor that matched the color of their mounts, with overlapping plates resembling the patterns on a tortoise shell. Their helmets were shaped like dragon heads, revealing only their eyes. Their mounts were iron-armored black tortoises. Each was a full 10 feet high and 30 feet long, covered entirely in shiny black scales. The edges of the tortoise shells were lined with sharp bone spikes that glinted with a cold, eerie light under the sun. Roar! Next, a series of tiger roars echoed as streaks of white light flashed across the ground. Indeed, it was the Bay Tiger Army. Though also numbering 100 riders, they were diametrically opposed to the steady and heavy aura of the Qianjue army. The Bay Tiger Army's appearance was like a storm, wild, swift, and unstoppable. They wore white light armor, with plates as thin as paper, yet as hard as steel, shimmering with a faint luster as they ran. Their mounts were all saber-toothed white tigers. Each was snow-white with ink-black stripes and sword-like fangs, standing 10 feet high and 20 feet long. Seeing this scene, Qianjue's face showed shock. This was the first time he had seen the Qianjue and Bay Tiger legions appear. Even though there were only 100 riders each, that steady weight and murderous aura made this small fry in the divine sea realm feel a slight tremor in his heart. Beside him, Marquis Qianjue Xuanming couldn't help but let a hint of pride surface on his face. Ninth Imperial Son, these are the 100 soldiers Old Bay and I brought. Since you've shown yourself, let us leave and return as quickly as possible. There was a trace of impatience in Xuanming's voice. He wanted to finish this mission as soon as possible. After all, in his mind, this time would be better spent drilling his Qianjue army. While Beixia didn't speak, the expression on his face carried much the same meaning as Xuanming's. Di Qianjue knew they looked down on him, feeling that every second spent with him was a waste of time. He simply smiled in response. In the military, the weak received no respect, even if he held the noble title of imperial son. Although he could use his father emperor's name to suppress them, there was no need. It was already good enough that they were willing to perform the kneeling salute to him now. However, if this were one of his older brothers, he believed the two marquises before him would definitely not have this attitude. This was the gap in talent and strength. Taking in their expressions, Di Qianjue thought to himself, "One day you will sincerely and truly submit at this prince's feet." He then walked toward the jade carriage, but just as he was about to step on, a voice called out, "Imperial son, imperial son, wait for me. Imperial son, imperial son, wait for me." Di Qianjue turned to look and saw a man dressed in a loose golden silk brocade robe flying through the air. This person had a round and sturdy build, with a belt tied below his belly, barely managing to hold up that bulging gut. He wore a purple gold crown on his head, with two pheasant feathers stuck in it that swayed continuously as he flew at high speed. Bang! A sound of landing rang out. Whether it was due to his weight or intentional, he actually cracked the floor tiles. "Ha! Imperial son, I missed you so much." He came before Di Qianjue, his fleshy face squeezing his eyes into slits as he smiled. "Xia, Shui Weiwei." Di Qianjue looked at the person before him and finally recognized him. This Xia Weiwei he spoke of was the son of Heavenly King Wuji, Lord Wan of the Taishu, Divine Dynasty, Wu Haoiwei. Memories surfaced of when he was 4 years old and his father emperor arranged for him to go to the academy to be taught by the imperial preceptor. Wu Haoiwei was also there. Although Wu Haoiwei was 5 or 6 years older than Di Qianjue at the time, Di Qianjue was a transmigrator. His literacy and calm demeanor deeply impressed Wu Haoiwei. The two stayed at the Divine Dynasty Academy for 10 years and had a very good relationship. Previously at the academy, Di Qianjue was young, but his theoretical knowledge overwhelmed everyone. However, due to his mediocre talent, he was ridiculed by many children of civil and military officials. Without waiting for Di Qianjue to speak, Wu Haoiwei would step up and give them a sound thrashing. Moreover, while beating them, he would constantly drill ideas into them. Even if the imperial son's talent is mediocre, he will always be your master. If any of you dare to bully your master in the future, I will destroy you. These words deeply moved Di Qianjue, and he regarded him as his brother in his heart. To protect him for a lifetime, Wu Haoiwei followed his father to the army when he was 20. Now the two hadn't seen each other for 4 or 5 years. In these years, Wu Haoiwei had performed extremely fiercely and ruthlessly in the army, earning the name Butcher. He didn't care about this fearsome reputation at all because before entering the army, he always remembered what Di Qianjue told him. In the army, if your heart isn't ruthless, you won't stand firm. Over the years, relying on his military merits and fearsome reputation, as well as his relationship with Heavenly King Wuji, he was now a general famous in the Divine Dynasties army, titled God, Lord Slaughter Heaven, with 50,000 soldiers under his command. Seeing Di Qianjue call him Xia Weiwei, Wu Haoiwei was not only not angry, but greeted him with a smile. If it were anyone else, he would have drawn his blade long ago. Imperial son, I heard you're going out today. I thought about how you've never even left the Imperial Palace. This time you're going to Qianjue Island, and the world outside is extremely treacherous. I was worried about you, so I rushed back from the army without stopping. Take me with you. With Xia Weiwei by your side, if any small fries dare to offend you, it saves you from having to take action yourself, right? Wu Haoiwei came behind Di Qianjue, massaging his shoulders while speaking in a wheedling tone. If the soldiers under his command saw this expression, their eyes would probably pop out. The dignified God, Lord Slaughter Heaven, Wu Haoiwei, who had the name of the butcher, could actually act so coquettishly? Even Marquis Shanwu, Xuan Ming, and Marquis Hui, Bei Xia, who were standing nearby, couldn't help but chuckle. Wu Haoiwei's small eyes flickered with a sharp glint. His eye corner twitched, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared as he leaned into Qianjue's ear. Imperial son, don't look at these two guys having decent strength. Given their attitude towards you, they might not be useful at a critical moment. No matter how small his voice was, how could it escape the ears of those in the supreme realm? Wu Haoiwei, what are you saying? Marquis Qianjue, Xuan Ming, glared with eyes wide open, and an invisible pressure rushed straight at Wu Haoiwei. Buzz, the powerful pressure caused space to distort. Wu Haoiwei, who had recently stepped into the Divine Lord realm, mobilized all his strength to resist. Screech! Bang! The tiles under his feet formed a spiderweb pattern and then directly collapsed. Wu Haoiwei's round and sturdy body broke into a sweat, which instantly soaked his clothes, and beads of sweat rolled down his flushed face. Xuan Ming, if you don't stop now, the day this lord steps into the supreme realm will be the time you kneel on the ground. Wu Haoiwei, who was holding on, did not beg for mercy, nor did he use his father's name to press others, because in the army, relying on one's parents was looked down upon. Oh, really? In that case, you should kneel for this marquis first. Just as Xuan Ming was about to continue exerting force, Qianjue's scolding voice rang out. Enough! He knew that Wu Haoiwei's words were intentionally meant for Marquis Qianjue and Marquis Houwei to hear. Despite Wu Haoiwei's crude appearance, his mind was quite clever. The purpose of his words was to goad the two, wanting Xuan Ming and Bei Xia to be more attentive during this trip. Qianjue's face was gloomy. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Xuan Ming, his lips parting slightly. Marquis Qianjue, if you do not wish to accompany this prince, I will go and inform Father Emperor now and have him arrange for someone else. Hearing that he was going to see the imperial lord, Xuan Ming immediately withdrew his pressure. If this matter reached the imperial lord, a punishment would be a small matter. If he were charged with disobeying a decree, he wouldn't be able to bear it. He, Ninth Imperial son, must be joking. How could I be unwilling to go? I was just playing around with the heavenly king's little brat. Well, set off now. He set off now. Xuan Ming's burly, tower-like body looked quite ridiculous acting in such a fawning manner. Qianjue gave a cold snort, flicked his sleeve, and boarded the jade carriage with Wu Haoiwei. Bei Xia, who had not spoken, glanced at Xuan Ming and said via voice transmission, You overdid it. Xuan Ming scratched the back of his head, pretending to be simple-minded. Is it that obvious? It was just short of writing, I don't want to go on your face. After Bei Xia finished speaking, he waved his hand, and a silver-winged white tiger appeared out of thin air. Roar! The tiger's roar shook the sky. The silver-winged white tiger flapped its wings and instantly arrived before Bei Xia. He flipped onto the white tiger's back and shouted, Depart. In an instant, the 100 soldiers of the Beihu army and the 5 crimson flame golden lions pulled the jade carriage and took to the air. As for Xuan Ming, he looked at the departing group and smiled. I didn't want to go in the first place, but the imperial lord's command must be followed. However, rumor has it that the 9th imperial son is humble and polite, but that moment just now truly showed some of the majesty of a ruler. A pity his talent is. Xuan Ming shook his head and then released his mount, which was a mountain-like chaos dragon turtle. He flew onto the turtle's back and shouted to the 100 soldiers of the Xuanwu army, Everyone, follow this marquis. Rumble! Xuan Ming led the Xuanwu army through the air, disappearing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Just after they left, a black-robed figure appeared silently within Taihu Hall and bowed to Di Qingyan, who was currently reviewing memorials. Master, the 9th prince has already departed. Without even lifting his head, Di Qingyan asked indifferently, What are the movements of those sects and great families? In response to Master, the sects show nothing unusual. However, the 5 great clans have already learned the news of the monarch Xiaoyou's successor leaving the island. But only the Jianan Yi family and the Murung family of the East have taken action. I fear the 9th prince's journey might be. Before he could finish a sentence, Di Qingyan's voice cut him off directly. What about his elder brothers? The black-robed figure was slightly taken aback before hastily replying. The other 8 princes show no signs of anything unusual. Fine, you may withdraw. Having understood the information from all sides, Di Qingdian dismissed him. After the black-robed man left, he closed a memorial, his majestic gaze staring into the void. The Yi family, the Murung family, it's time to clean up your claws within the Divine Dynasty. Outside the Middle Divine Realm, the territory did not consist entirely of alien races and fierce beasts. There were also human powerhouses who had established their own clan lands and mountain gates. In a place known as Jiangnan, a land of water and mist, the misty waves stretched out boundlessly. In the center of the vast Lake Tai stood a solitary island. Though called an island, it was actually a mountain peak that had been artificially leveled, rising over 1,000 feet above the water. Surrounded by water on all sides, pillars of light shot out from the surface, forming a giant, transparent barrier. This was a water attribute formation protecting the isolated island, for this place was the home of the Yi family, one of the 5 great clans of the Taishu Divine Dynasty. Viewed from high above, the Yi family's ancestral land spread across the lake like an ink-wash painting. White walls and black tiles, upturned eaves and corners. Layers of pavilions were built according to the mountain's terrain in an orderly fashion. At this moment, within Qianjue Hall of the Yi family, Patriarch Yi Qianhuan sat in the primary seat, a grandmaster's chair, wearing a dark green brocade robe with gold patterns. He looked to be in his 40s, with a thin face and a pair of triangular eyes that were as gloomy as a cold pool. A faint, half-smile always hung at the corners of his mouth, the specific arrogance of a superior who has seen through everything. His hands rested on the armrests of the chair, his right fingers rhythmically tapping the wood with a doo-doo sound. Below the hall stood a young man, Yi Wuchun, the youngest son of Yi Qianhuan, 25 years of age. His appearance was 70% similar to his father's, but compared to his father's gloom, he possessed a sharpness and flamboyance unique to the youth. His long hair was tied up with a green jade hairpin, revealing a smooth forehead and narrow eyes. He wore a moon-white brocade robe embroidered with gold-threaded emerald bamboo, with a silver silk python belt tied around his waist. At this moment, Yi Wuchun stood below the hall holding a folding fan, his voice clear and carrying the specific nobility of a scion of a great family. "Father, the news is certain. Di Qianjue has already taken people toward Xiaoyou Island." Yi Qianhuan did not respond immediately, his fingers still tapping lightly on the armrest. After several breaths had passed, he spoke slowly. "How many people?" "Marquis Shunwu Xuanming, Marquis Houwei Beixia, plus 100 Xuanwu army and 100 Beihu army." At this point, Yi Wuchun paused, and a smile curled on his lips. "There is one more, Wu Haoiwei, who recently broke through to the Divine Lord realm in the Divine Dynasties army." Wu Haoiwei. Yi Qianhuan's triangular eyes narrowed slightly, as if he had recalled something. "Is that the son of Heavenly King Wuji, who has been gaining a lot of fame in the Taishu army in recent years?" "Exactly, it's him." Yi Wuchun's response caused the corners of Yi Qianhuan's mouth to turn up slightly, revealing an extremely faint smile. To break through to the Divine Lord realm in his 20s, this boy's talent is that of a top-tier monster. I just didn't expect that Lord Wuan would actually let his precious darling accompany a piece of trash. He stood up and walked to the window with his hands behind his back, looking out at the shimmering Lake Tai. If that trash Di Qianjue is allowed to complete the marriage alliance with the monarch Xiaoyou disciple this time, then in the entire human race, no one will truly be able to shake the Taishu Divine Dynasty. Therefore, we must never let this marriage happen. Yi Wuchun spoke with a ferocious expression, while Yi Qianhuan gave a cold laugh. "Heh! Indeed, if they achieve the marriage alliance, the Divine Dynasty's power will rise to another level. After all, the monarch Xiaoyou power is right there. By then, we great families will be dismantled one by one by the Divine Dynasty." He walked back to the Grandmaster's chair, sat down, and fixed his gaze on his son. Wuchen, are you willing to make this trip for the Yi family? Hearing this, Yi Wuchen performed a flourish with the folding fan in his hand and bowed happily, saying, "Your son is willing to go." Good. Yi Qiniwan took a jade slip from his sleeve and handed it to him across the air. This contains the coordinates of Xianxia Island and some information about the island. Remember, your task is to sabotage the marriage alliance. Of course, if you can replace him and make Jiang Lingshan take a fancy to you, forming a marriage alliance with our Yi family. Yi Qiniwan paused, his gaze becoming deep. Then overthrowing the Divine Dynasty will be a matter just around the corner. Yi Wuchen took the jade slip, a confident smile curling on his lips. Father, rest assured, in what way can that trash-D Qianjue compare to me? If Jiang Lingshan has eyes, she will naturally choose me. Yi Qiniwan looked at his son, a flash of satisfaction in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by gloom. Do not be careless. Take the 12 blood guards and select 30 experts from the clan. If necessary, he made a throat-slitting gesture. Yi Wuchen understood and tapped the folding fan against his palm. Your son understands. On the other side, in the Tianwan mountain range of the Far East. As the name suggested, this was a mountain range that looked as if it had been severed by a single sword strike. The terrain was steep, with cliffs rising thousands of feet, covered in perennial snow and shrouded in clouds and mist. This was the location of the Murung family. The buildings were constructed halfway up the highest peak, like a goshawk perched on a precipice. However, the buildings here were not a scattered arrangement of pavilions, but rather like a white city embedded within the gray mountain rock. At this moment, inside Lingshuang Hall, the main hall of the Murung family, the Murung Patriarch, Supreme Heavenly Venerable Murung Kaio, was standing by the window of Lingshuang Hall, hands behind his back as he looked at the sea of clouds. He wore a plain white robe and looked to be only in his early 40s. His figure was slender, his face as handsome as carved jade, and a 3-strand beard hung down to his chest, giving him a somewhat transcendent, immortal-like air. But his eyes betrayed his true nature. They were the eyes of a wolf. The pupils were a rare, deep gray, and his gaze was cold, calm, and cruel, without a hint of emotion. At this time, a man in black knelt on one knee below the hall and said in a low voice, "Patriarch, the location of Xiaoyo Island has been confirmed. The 9th imperial son of the Divine Dynasty, Qianjue, will arrive tomorrow." Supreme Heavenly Venerable Murung Kaio did not turn around, still looking at the sea of clouds. Then, a voice devoid of any emotion rang out. "How many people?" "Xuan Ming, Bei Xia, 100 Xuanwu army, and 100 Beihu army." Also, the man in black paused and then continued, "Heavenly King Wuji's son, Wu Haoyi Wei." Supreme Heavenly Venerable Murung Kaio showed no expression. He turned around, walked to the Grand Master's chair in the center of the hall, sat down, and after taking a sip of tea, spoke slowly, his voice as cold as a jade chime. "Since Di Qingdian wants a marriage alliance, then I shall make you turn against each other. Since Di Qingdian wants an alliance through marriage, then I shall make you turn against each other." Supreme Heavenly Venerable Murung Kaio words left the black-clad man below the hall silent, his head bowed low. Supreme Heavenly Venerable Murung Kaio set down his teacup, his gaze falling upon the man in black. "Relay my orders. Deploy the dark blades." The black-clad man's body trembled slightly. The dark blades, the Murung family's most secretive assassin organization. Every member was an orphan adopted by the family from a young age, undergoing brutal training where 99% were eliminated. Those who remained were all death soldiers. They had no names, only code names, no emotions, only orders. "The target is—" the black-clad man asked cautiously. A cold glint flashed in Supreme Heavenly Venerable Murung Kaio wolf-like eyes. "Jiang Lingshan." And then, he stood up, hands behind his back, and walked to the window to watch the churning sea of clouds outside. Frame the Divine Dynasty. The black-clad man's pupils constricted slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. Your subordinate understands. Remember, Supreme Heavenly Venerable Murung Kaio voice suddenly became as cold as a blade, at any cost. Even if every member of the Dark Blades dies, the mission must be completed before Qianjue and the others arrive. Yes. The black-clad man rose, turned, and strode out of Lingshuang Hall. Only Supreme Heavenly Venerable Murung Kaio remained in the hall. He sat back down on the cold jade chair, picked up his teacup, and gently blew on the floating leaves. Di Qingdian, he murmured to himself, a cold smile curling his lips. Your D clan has sat in that seat for far too long. Xiaoyo Island, a celestial mountain on the sea, was hidden year-round by an ancient grand array. Without the monarch Xiaoyo permission, it was difficult for ordinary people to find. Because a disciple was leaving the island, the entirety of Xiaoyo Island had appeared on the surface of the sea. Outside Xiaoyo Island, 10,000 miles of azure waves shimmered like a giant sapphire under the sunlight. The sea was as calm as a mirror, reflecting the white clouds in the sky. A few snow-white seabirds skimmed past, tracing long, thin ripples on the water surface. The edge of the island was a crescent-shaped white sand beach. The grains of sand were as fine as powder and white as snow, feeling as soft as stepping on clouds. At this moment, a woman stood barefoot on the warm white jade. She had been waiting here for an hour. Master said someone would come to pick me up and take me off the island today. What kind of person will they be? She tilted her head in thought, silently reciting the name Di Qianjue in her heart, thinking it sounded quite nice. Then, she recalled her master's words. Nishang, you are descending the mountain this time to experience the mortal world. Remember, people in the mortal world have schemes, calculations, greed, and obsessions. You must learn to distinguish who is truly good to you and who is being hypocritical. Jiang Lingshan nodded and then asked, Master, then is that Di Qianjue who is coming to pick me up sincere or hypocritical? Master was silent for a moment before saying, I do not know, but I have performed a divination for you. This person is fated to you. Fated? Jiang Lingshan blinked. What kind of fate? Master did not answer, only smiled, and there was something in that smile she could not understand. Now, standing on the white jade stone, the sea breeze blew through her long hair and sleeves, making her look like a white cloud about to drift away with the wind. Jiang Lingshan beauty was not of the mortal realm. Her oval face had soft lines, her distant mountain eyebrows were dark without needing makeup, and the corners of her phoenix eyes were slightly upturned. Her amber pupils were clear to the bottom, her nose was elegant, and her lips were like cherries, pouting slightly with a girl's innocence. Her skin was as white as snow, faintly shimmering with a luster like moonlight. She wore a white robe, the fabric as light as a cicada's wing, glowing with a faint silver light in the sun. The style of the dress was extremely simple. A cross collar with the right lapel over the left, wide sleeves, a narrow waist, and a hem that trailed 3 inches on the ground. There was no embroidery or ornamentation, as clean as a sheet of rice paper that had never been touched by a brush. But the simpler it was, the more it emphasized her untainted nature. A white silk ribbon was tied loosely around her waist in a knot, with 2 tassels at the end of the ribbon swaying gently in the sea breeze. Her long hair fell like a waterfall, without any hair ornaments. It was only loosely tied at the ends with a white silk ribbon, while the rest of her black hair draped casually behind her, flying with the wind. Barefoot as she was, she didn't care about the few grains of white sand sticking to her soles. Occasionally, she would lightly stand on her tiptoes on the white jade pier, as if testing the temperature of the ground. Jiang Lingshan had been quietly watching the sea like this for an hour. She had been watching for a long time. The seabirds chasing each other caused the corners of her mouth to turn up slightly from time to time. And just then, she felt a dense killing intent. That killing intent was cold, sinister, and without warning, like the fangs of a venomous snake lunging from the shadows. The smile still hung on Jiang Lingshan's lips, but her gaze changed. Those amber eyes instantly turned from warm to icy cold. Crash! The sea's surface exploded. 10 black shadows soared into the sky from the water, splashing droplets that turned into countless crystalline beads in the sunlight. They were dressed in black martial attire with black masks covering their faces, revealing only pairs of emotionless eyes. They held pitch-black short blades in their hands, with 2 words engraved on the blades, Dark Blade. At the same time, more than a dozen black shadows shot out from the bamboo forest outside the island, their speed as fast as ghosts. Figures also burst out from beneath the sand, bringing up a cloud of white sand. A total of 32 Dark Blade assassins. Their cultivation levels, the lowest was the Spirit-Severing Realm, and the highest had already stepped into the God King realm. 32 streaks of killing intent converged, forming an invisible giant net that firmly trapped Qianjue. By the Imperial Lord's decree, execute the successor of the monarch Xianxia. The leader let out a cold voice, and the 32 figures pounced simultaneously toward Qianjue, who was as white as snow. Whoosh, whoosh. Qianjue did not move. She didn't even knit her brows. Then she raised her hand. The movement was very slow, so slow it looked like slow motion. Her hand rose slowly from her side, fingers spread, palm facing down, as if she were stroking something. But with just this gentle raising of her hand, heaven and earth changed color. Woo-woo! Above the pier outside the island, the cloudless azure sky was instantly obscured by a layer of thick dark clouds. The dark clouds came without warning, as if an invisible giant hand had grabbed all the clouds in the sky, crumpled them into a ball, and pressed them overhead. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. It wasn't a normal drop in temperature, but a coldness that seeped from deep within the bone marrow. The moisture in the air instantly condensed into ice crystals, fluttering down like a snowfall. On the sea, centered around the pier, a layer of white frost spread in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye. The seawater froze into ice the moment it touched the frost. That ice was no ordinary ice. It was blue-white, crystal clear, and emitted a bone-chilling cold light. The figures of the 32 Dark Blade assassins stiffened simultaneously. It wasn't that they wanted to stop, but that they had no choice. For an invisible force, like thousands of unseen threads, had firmly bound them. That power was cold, domineering, and irresistible, as if the power of laws was crushing these 32 ants in the palm of its hand. Wah! The pupils of the God King realm assassin leading them shrank violently, and he was just about to speak, but Qianjue hand gently pressed downward. Crack! The sounds of 32 sets of bones shattering merged into a single note. The sound wasn't loud. It was as clear as if it had rung right by the ear. It was the sound of bones being pulverized, flesh being squeezed, and life being crushed. The bodies of the 32 Dark Blade assassins were simultaneously forced down by an invisible, massive force. Thud! 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 Their knees buckled, and they knelt upon the ice. The sound of kneecaps shattering rang out again, but they did not let out a single scream. Not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. Because that force had not only crushed their bones, but also sealed their throats. Blood seeped from the corners of their mouths, their nostrils, and their ears, dripping onto the ice and blooming into shocking flowers of blood against the blue-white surface. But they were not yet dead. The God King realm assassin gritted his teeth, exhausting every ounce of strength to break free from that force. A golden light erupted from his body. It was the domain power of the God King realm. The golden light condensed on the surface of his body, attempting to use laws to force open the invisible restraint. Qianjue glanced at him. Just one glance. That gaze was cold and indifferent, as if looking at a dying ant struggling in its final moments. Then she withdrew her gaze. At the same time, her raised right hand slowly clenched. Her fingers pulled in, forming a fist. Boom! The bodies of the 32 Dark Blade assassins exploded at the exact same instant. They were not shattered by external force, but exploded from within. Their blood, bones, muscles, and internal organs were crushed and detonated by that invisible force in the same instant, turning into clouds of blood mist that ballooned above the ice as bits of flesh and severed limbs scattered. The blood mist dyed the entire pier red. However, that blood mist automatically avoided xianxia when it came within 3 feet of her. It was as if an invisible barrier existed, isolating her from all filth. She remained in white robes as pure as snow, untainted by a single speck of dust. From a moment she raised her hand to the moment she clenched her fist, barely 3 breaths had passed for the 32 Dark Blade assassins. This group of experts at the spirit-severing realm and above, including a God King realm, were simply gone. Xianxia withdrew her hand, letting it hang at her side. Her expression remained calm, as if she had just swatted a few mosquitoes. She looked down at the ice beneath her feet and frowned slightly, not because of the killing, but because the ice had become dirty. Master was right. The people down the mountain are indeed very complicated. She murmured softly to herself, her voice clear and light like wind passing through a bamboo forest. Then she turned around, walked back onto the pier, and stood once again upon that clean piece of white jade. The sea breeze blew, dispersing the scent of blood in the air and causing her long hair and white robes to flutter gently. She returned to that untainted state, as if nothing had happened just now, and continued to watch the sea. Half an hour later, from a distance outside Qianjue Island, the sounds of footsteps in the air echoed, rumble. On the distant horizon, 5 crimson flame golden lions pulled a jade carriage, with a troop of 100 knights galloping along each side. Indeed, these people were Qianjue and his party. At this moment, he stood outside the jade carriage with his hands behind his back, the gale whipping his starry cloak until it snapped loudly. Wu Haoiwei stood by his side, his 200-pound frame wrapped in a wide, gold-threaded brocade robe, his round belly straining his belt out of shape. His round face was full of excitement, and his eyes, squeezed into slits by flesh, struggled to open wide as he tried to see Qianjue Island in the distance. At this time, Wu Haoiwei rubbed his hands and chuckled. "Divine Son, I heard that the monarch Qianjue disciple is a peerless beauty? Di Qianjue Nyoredim, Divine Son, do you think the rumors are true?" Seeing that the Divine Son was not paying him any attention, Wu Haoiwei continued. "I also heard that when the monarch Qianjue was young, she was the #1 beauty of the continent. As her disciple, she definitely won't be lacking. Divine Son, you've really hit the jackpot this time. Shut up." Xuan Ming, who was driving the Chaos Dragon Turtle, coldly spat out those 2 words. "Why you?" Wu Haoiwei was about to start cursing, but when he turned and saw it was Xuan Ming, he shrank his neck and muttered quietly, "What's with the attitude?" By now, the jade carriage had arrived at the pier outside Qianjue Island. When everyone saw the scene on the pier, everyone's expression changed. On the pier, the sea surface was frozen for dozens of yards. The blue-white ice was covered with shocking bloodstains and minced meat. That was human meat. Severed limbs were scattered across the ice, some already half frozen into the layer, revealing grim white bones. Shreds of black fabric, broken short blades, shattered face masks, they were everywhere. The air was thick with the heavy scent of blood, which the sea breeze dispersed but remained pungent nonetheless. And in the center of this azure field, upon that clean giant block of white jade, stood a woman. Robes white as snow, long hair flying, standing barefoot. There was not a single bloodstain on her dress. There was not a single expression on her face. She just stood there quietly, as if the field of corpses behind her had nothing to do with her. Xuan Ming's pupils shrank violently, and his right hand subconsciously drew a 9-ring greatsword. The 9 copper rings on the back of the blade clinked softly, emitting a low chime. Beixiao's eyes snapped open. Those eyes that were always half squinted were now wide, his gaze as sharp as a blade's edge. He stared at the remains on the ice, then looked at the woman in white, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly. "Not good." He whispered those two words, his voice as cold as ice shards. Qianjue turned to look at him. "What is it?" Bei Xiao's gaze swept over the corpses, his voice kept extremely low. "The way these people died, it wasn't an ordinary fight. They were crushed by a single hand." Then he pointed to the marks on the eyes. "Look, the distribution of these bloodstains is radial, spreading outward with the peer as the center. Everyone died at the same time. There aren't even signs of a struggle before death." Having deduced this far, his voice grew even lower. To be able to use such means, one must have a cultivation of at least the supreme realm or above. Bei Xiao's gaze fell upon Jiang Lingshan, a hint of doubt appearing in his eyes. Looking at this girl's age, she shouldn't have that kind of strength yet. But who is responsible for these mangled corpses? Could it be? Bei Xiao was thinking of the monarch Xiaoyu, and, as the commander of the Beihu army, he immediately connected the dots to the crux of the matter. He took a sharp breath. Wait, someone is trying to assassinate her and then frame the Divine Dynasty. Upon hearing this, everyone's brows furrowed simultaneously. Xuanming's grip tightened, his knuckles turning white. He scanned the surroundings, his gaze as sharp as a hawk's, as if searching for eyes watching from the shadows. On Wu Haoiwei's round face, his usual silly grin vanished, replaced by a rare trace of solemnity. After all, in the entire human race, the number of forces capable of sending assassins at the critical moment of the Divine Dynasty's marriage alliance with the monarch Xiaoyu and daring to frame the Divine Dynasty could be counted on one hand. Qianjue's brow furrowed into a deep frown. He understood Bei Xiao's meaning. Jiang Lingshan had encountered an assassination attempt just after leaving the island. If she or the monarch Xiaoyu believed the Divine Dynasty had sent people to kill her, then not only would this marriage alliance fail, but the Divine Dynasty would also gain another enemy. An enemy whose combat power was among the top in the human race. "I'll go explain," Qianjue said in a deep voice. He took a deep breath, jumped down from the jade carriage, and walked toward the pier. As he drew closer, he saw the profile of the woman's face. With just one glance, his footsteps halted. His breathing stopped. His heart seemed to skip a beat. All of this was simply because, in 2 lifetimes, he had never seen such a beautiful woman. In his previous life, he had seen countless Photoshop pictures, faces under filters, and delicate countenances carved by plastic surgery knives, but not a single face could compare to the woman before him, even though he was only seeing her profile right now. Those so-called beauties were flowers of the mortal world. No matter how beautiful, they carried the traces of dust. He opened his mouth, wanting to speak, but found his throat felt as if it were blocked by something. He swallowed hard, trying to make his voice sound more normal. Hello." His voice was a bit hoarse and stuttering, like a child who had just learned to speak. "May I ask if you're Jiang?" Before he could finish his sentence, Jiang Lingshan turned her head. Their eyes met. He saw her full face, an oval face, eyebrows like distant mountains, phoenix eyes with amber pupils, and slightly pouting lips. Every feature was breathtakingly beautiful, and together, they were so stunning it was suffocating. Qianjue's face turned red in an instant. From the base of his neck to the tips of his ears, he turned as red as a cooked lobster. Having lived 2 lives, he had never felt this way before. "Are you the Qianjue who came to pick me up from the island?" Her voice was clear and light, like a flowing spring in a mountain valley, or like wind passing through a bamboo forest. Qianjue finally snapped out of it, cursing himself inwardly. How pathetic. I've lived 2 lives. How can I let a woman's beauty throw my mind into such disarray? But this woman, she really is beautiful. However, in order not to lose the dignity of the Divine Dynasty, he feigned composure. That's right, it is indeed this prince. And you are the successor of the monarch Xiaoyu, Jiang Lingshan?" He originally wanted to confirm the other party's identity again, and then explained that the assassination here had nothing to do with their Divine Dynasty. To his surprise, Jiang Lingshan tilted her head, her amber eyes sparkling as she looked at him and asked a question that caught him completely off guard. Is it fun outside? Huh. The lines Qianjue had prepared in his mind were actually replaced by this single word. Master said you would take me to experience the mortal world. Can you tell me about the outside world first? Xianxia spoke seriously, her tone carrying a hint of expectation, a hint of curiosity, and a hint of childish excitement. The Qianjue. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again. He looked at Xianxia's sparkling eyes, then looked at the severed limbs and mangled flesh all over the pier. Xianxia, these assassins. I know, they have nothing to do with you. Master said that when assassins are on a mission, they won't reveal their employer's identity. Xianxia's words surprised Qianjue, while he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the monarch Qianjue didn't misunderstand. You haven't answered my question yet. Is it fun outside? Xianxia pouted, looking at him expectantly. Qianjue's expression was somewhat awkward. After all, he didn't know himself, as this was his first time going out since coming to this world. Thus, he said with a face full of sincerity, Xianxia, it's hard for me to judge whether the outside world is fun or not, as everyone's feelings are different. As for explaining the outside world to you, I think it's more practical for you to experience it for yourself. You have a point. Then let's go. Just as Xianxia was about to step out, she was called back by Qianjue. Wait, Xianxia, did your master tell you anything else besides letting you leave the island? Qianjue was here for a blind date. Xianxia was so innocent that taking her out like this gave him the feeling of kidnapping a child. Nothing else. Xianxia's answer was very blunt. Then do you know? Qianjue originally wanted to tell her the truth, but he swallowed his words halfway. Forget it. Let's go first. The two of them arrived at the jade carriage. Everyone was stunned by Xianxia's beauty. As supreme experts, the expressions on Xuanming and Beixia faces were fleeting. But Wu Haoiwei was different. He came to Qianjue's side and whispered in his ear, God's son, this successor of the monarch Qianjue really is as beautiful as the rumors say. I think in the entire Tianqian continent, only she is worthy of you, God's son. His words caused Xianxia, who was about to step into the jade carriage, to pause for a moment before she lifted the curtain and walked inside. Qianjue rolled his eyes at Wu Haoiwei and said irritably, Go away. Then he spoke to Xuanming and Beixia. Let's return to the Divine Dynasty. Without waiting for their response, Qianjue also walked into the jade carriage. But just then, a crisp mechanical sound rang out in his mind. Ding! Detected a target suitable for host-partner binding. Would you like to bind? Finally met the conditions. Qianjue had almost forgotten about the system. Now that it had popped up on its own and met the criteria, he didn't hesitate for a moment. Bind. Ding. The soft rice value system is binding a partner for the host. Target. Xianxia, the sole successor of the monarch Qianjue. That's it. What about her cultivation realm? Her beauty rating? Xianxia's personal information was not fully presented on the system panel. Even regarding Qianjue's inquiry, it was unclear whether the system was busy binding the target or intentionally ignoring him. Ding! Binding successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the newbie gift pack. Would you like to open it? Hearing the newbie gift pack, Qianjue didn't dwell on the previous questions and spoke hurriedly. Open it. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining 10,000 soft rice points, 9th level Divine King Realm Cultivation, and the Eating Soft Rice Hard Title X1. Qianjue Ice Widened Instantly. Divine King Realm Cultivation. 10,000 soft rice points. He looked at the system projection in front of him with an excited face, almost unable to hold back a laugh. The Divine King Realm. That is an existence that possesses the laws of heaven and earth, and he has only just opened his divine sea, having just reached the stage of internal vision. In one go, he can jump 7 major realms. You must know, for ordinary prodigies to step into the Divine King Realm, It takes nearly 1,000 years, and some people might never reach this realm in their entire lives. If he didn't have this newbie gift pack, with his aptitude, even if he piled up resources from the Divine Dynasty, it would take hundreds of years. But now the Divine King realm is within reach. This soft rice system is damn good. He took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the excitement in his heart. Can't rush. Now is not the time to break through. He glanced at Qianjue, who was sitting on the soft couch inside the jade carriage and was very curious about her cultivation system. Previously by Yao and Beiling's cultivation and beauty both had data. Why doesn't Qianjue have any? Ding. Does the host have no clue? Is Qianjue beauty something that can be measured by data? As for cultivation, those who can be automatically bound by this system must be stronger than the host. Otherwise, how can the host eat soft rice? Friendly reminder. If the host cannot earn soft rice points within 10 days, the system will unbind the partner, and all rewards obtained by the host will be reclaimed. Upon hearing that he still had to earn soft rice points, otherwise the partner would be unbound, and even the rewards will be taken back, wouldn't his God King dream be shattered? No, this must absolutely not happen. System, how should I obtain soft rice points? The host must figure it out himself. This system can only give you one piece of advice. Do not be male chauvinistic. After all, men who know how to act coquettishly get candy. The system's words immediately created a mental image in Qianjue's mind. Thinking of himself, a dignified 8-foot man, snuggling in a woman's arms, he couldn't help but shiver all over. What's wrong? Qianjue, sitting on the side seat of the jade carriage, saw his expression and couldn't help but ask curiously. Her phoenix eyes blinked as she stared at Qianjue. The latter met her gaze and smiled awkwardly. No, nothing. But just as Qianjue sat down on the main seat inside the jade carriage, Wu Haoyue walked in. My son of the emperor is shy after seeing Miss Jiang. Seeing this, Qianjue pretended to be cold and glared at him. Shut up. All right. I shouldn't be in the car. I should be on the roof. Then I'll leave. Saying this, Wu Haoyue was about to walk out of the jade carriage. Seeing this, Qianjue hurriedly stopped him. You wait. Qianjue was worried that if the other party left, the entire jade carriage would be left with only himself and Qianjue. Wouldn't that make things awkward? What else is there? My lord son of the emperor. Wu Haoyue raised his eyebrows at him. He knew why the son of the emperor had kept him behind. Asking this was undoubtedly to tease him. Qianjue walked quickly towards him, grabbed him, and whispered, You stay, help me, liven up the atmosphere. Ignoring whether he agreed or not, Qianjue pulled him and pressed him onto a seat in the jade carriage, then sat back down on the main seat himself. Wu Haoyue didn't expect that the son of the emperor, who used to be like a top scholar, would be so nervous in front of a woman. He smiled slightly at Qianjue, but his fleshy face combined with this smile looked slightly lecherous. Miss Jiang has been on Qianjue Island since she was young, so you probably haven't seen food from the outside world, right? My son of the emperor prepared some specially for you. Immediately, he waved his sleeve, and a square table appeared between the three of them, covered with refreshments, including osmanthus cake, lotus seed pastry, hibiscus cake, and so on. Qianjue had been cultivating on the island since childhood and had hardly eaten much. When she was hungry as a child, she would take Anidia pills or something similar. When she had cravings, her master would get her some meat from spirit beasts or ferocious beasts. But now, seeing these exquisite pastries, she curiously picked one up to look at it and took a small bite. Suddenly, a sweet taste completely opened up her taste buds. What is this? It's so delicious. She then took another bite and chewed slowly. Wu Haoyue glanced at Qianjue, as if claiming credit, and then said to Qianjue, Since Miss Jiang likes it, then eat more. My son of the emperor has plenty of these pastries in Qianjue Palace. That's right. Since Miss Jiang has left the island, in the future, I will take you to taste all the delicacies of the entire Middle Divine Realm. Seeing that the awkward atmosphere had been broken, Qianjue also hurriedly chimed in. while Jiang Lingshan thanked him while eating. The thank you. Di Qianjue didn't expect that Jiang Lingshan, who previously seemed like someone who didn't eat mortal food and existed like an immortal deity from a past life, had such a side. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but lift slightly, revealing a smile. Miss Jiang, you don't need to be reserved in front of me in the future. I am not reserved. It's just that my master said people from the outside world are very complicated, and I should talk as little as possible. Otherwise, one day I might get cheated without even knowing it. Before he could finish speaking, Jiang Lingshan began to explain, and Di Qianjue's heart skipped a beat, and he laughed dryly. Your master is right, but aren't you afraid that You won't. Jiang Lingshan interrupted him again. Di Qianjue, why? Because I think you don't look like a bad person. Jiang Lingshan stopped what she was doing and looked at him very seriously. Your eyes are very clean. Di Qianjue was stunned. In these 18 years, this was the first time someone had said his eyes were clean. How did you tell? Di Qianjue asked subconsciously. Hearing this, Jiang Lingshan's hand holding the teacup stopped in midair, as if she was organizing her words. Your eyes when you look at me have shock, have admiration, but there is no greed. But your eyes tell me that you seem to have something to say to me. When these words were spoken, Di Qianjue was stunned inside. He didn't expect that the woman in front of him could actually see through these things from his eyes. At this moment, he fell silent, and Wu Howiwei, seeing him not speaking for a long time, couldn't help but look at him suspiciously. The jade carriage suddenly became silent. After a few breaths, Di Qianjue looked at Jiang Lingshan with a serious face. There is something I think I should tell you. Jiang Lingshan blinked her phoenix eyes. What thing? Facing such a pure gaze, Di Qianjue became even more determined about his plan. He took a deep breath. My father emperor sent me to pick you up. Actually, he has an agreement with your master to let you marry me as my wife. Jiang Lingshan was slightly stunned, then nodded and replied. Oh, that's it. Di Qianjue was dumbfounded. He had been brewing for so long, and this was the only answer he got? Otherwise what? Jiang Lingshan looked at him, somewhat puzzled. My master told me that people outside the island do things with a purpose. Since you came to pick me up, there must be a purpose. But this purpose seems acceptable. What do you mean by acceptable? Aren't you angry? Why should I be angry? Jiang Lingshan said seriously. I feel that you have no malice towards me, and you even told me everything, which shows that you didn't intend to lie to me. Di Qianjue opened his mouth, but found himself speechless because this girl's logic seemed to have no problems. Beside him, Wu Howiwei was listening to their conversation. He was holding back his laughter, but his stomach was trembling, and he almost laughed out loud several times. Di Qianjue glanced at him, and Wu Howiwei hurriedly poked his face with both hands, nodding with a serious look. That's right, not bad. Miss Jiang makes sense. Seeing him like this, Di Qianjue couldn't be bothered with him. He withdrew his gaze and looked at Jiang Lingshan, then tentatively spoke up. Then, are you willing to marry me? Then, do you agree to marry me? Jiang Lingshan thought for a moment. What I need to do to marry you? Di Qianjue was completely speechless. He could see it now. This girl truly understood nothing at all. With a serious expression, he began to explain, to marry me means becoming my wife, and what a husband and wife do is... He gestured with his hands in the air, but what a husband and wife did was too embarrassing to say. In the end, he gave up helplessly. You don't need to do anything. Just like now. Eat when you want, drink when you want. Oh, okay. After a simple response, Jiang Lingshan continued eating. But Wu Howiwei couldn't hold it in any longer. A mouthful of tea sprayed from his mouth. Di Qianjue stared at him with a cold face and calmly spat out a single word. Scram. You got it. Wu Howiwei bolted toward the outside of the jade carriage. After he left, Jiang Lingshan asked curiously, Why do you call him Weiwei? Because his name is Wu Howiwei. Di Qianjue, still annoyed, replied casually, while Jiang Lingshan tilted her head and thought for a moment. I think he's quite round. Wouldn't Pang Pang be better? Whatever you think is best. Qianjue truly couldn't find the words to express his current feelings. Outside the jade carriage, under the escort of Xuanming and Bei Xia, they had already entered the region of the blazing demon forest. Countless fierce beasts and demonic beasts inhabited the demon forest. The flames never went out, and the air was thick with the smell of sulfur and charcoal. This place was one of the most dangerous forbidden zones on the Qianjue continent. Even experts of the heavenly venerable realm wouldn't dare to fly through the air here. Therefore, the Qianjue convoy traveled on the ground. But just then, Ninth Imperial Son, Xuanming's low voice came from outside the jade carriage, carrying a hint of alertness. The Qianjue seemed to sense something was wrong and stepped outside the jade carriage. In the distance, on the open ground before the blazing demon forest, stood a carriage pulled by shadow demon lions. Leading them was a young man dressed in a moon-white brocade robe, holding a folding fan. He had a thin face, and his triangular eyes held a touch of arrogance. Behind him, 12 dark shadows stood silently, their auras restrained. With Di Qianjue at current cultivation, he couldn't see through them at all. Indeed, the newcomers were Yi Wuchun and his group. At this moment, Yi Wuchun watched the slowly approaching crimson flame golden lion jade carriage, a cold sneer curling his lips. He snapped his folding fan shut, tapped it lightly against his palm, and said calmly, Di Qianjue, this young master has been waiting for you for a long time. On the other side, standing outside the jade carriage, Di Qianjue frowned as he looked at the people from the Yi family blocking the way. Wu Howiwei came to his side and said with a sinister expression, Imperial Son, these animals are from the Yi family. As for that brat, he is the youngest son of Yi Qinyuan, named Yi Wuchun. Di Qianjue sized up the other party expressionlessly, while Yi Wuchun also looked at him, but with a contemptuous smile on his face. Di Qianjue. His voice was unhurried. If not for his expression, it would have sounded like he was greeting an old friend. This young master will give you a chance. Let that Miss Jiang come out. I wish to personally speak a few words with her. He emphasized the word personally very heavily, as if it were a great favor. But the curtain of the crimson flame, golden lion jade carriage remained motionless. Yi Wuchun's smile stiffened for a moment before deepening. What? Does our ninth imperial son think this young master is unworthy of meeting Miss Jiang? Or he? A mocking laugh rang out, interrupting Yi Wuchun. Indeed, the speaker was Xuanming. He sat atop the chaos dragon turtle, his mysterious iron-heavy armor glinting coldly under the dark red sky. His mouth curled into a lopsided grin, revealing white teeth beneath his bronze skin, his eyes full of undisguised ridicule. You think you're worthy? Those 4 words were like 4 stones being hurled at Yi Wuchun's face. Xuanming slowly stood up, his 10-foot-tall frame looking like an iron tower. His voice was coarse and raspy, yet carried a power that sent chills down one's spine. Kid, you dare to block the Imperial Son's carriage? What? Does your Yi family think that by breaking away from the Divine Dynasty, you can contend with us? He paused, his gaze shifting from Yi Wuchun to the 12 dark shadows behind him, the sarcasm at the corners of his mouth deepening. Or are you saying that with just this bit of strength, you intend to stop this marquis? Yi Wuchun's triangular eyes sank slightly, but his smile remained unchanged. Whether we can contend is not for this young master to say. His gaze moved past Xuanming and landed on the crimson flame golden lion jade carriage, his voice suddenly rising. But whether you can leave, he paused intentionally, his eyes scanning around the jade carriage before finally landing on its curtain, is a matter of a single word from me. The air fell silent for a moment, and then, with just you lot of riffraff, Bei Xiao's voice was as cold as a wind blowing out of an ice cellar. Riding his silver-winged white tiger, he took a few steps forward, his plain white brocade robe looking like a bolt of lightning against the red and black landscape. His eyes were fully open. Those eyes that were always half-squinted were now wide, his gaze as sharp as a blade, as if it could gouge 2 holes in someone. His voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear, like the tip of a knife scraping against iron and stone. Although Yi family blood guards are powerful, there is only one in the supreme realm. Even if the rest are all in the god realm. A cold curve curled his lips. In the eyes of this marquis, you're still not worth mentioning. As he spoke, a white feathered arrow appeared out of thin air in his right palm, and he spun it around his fingertips. The arrowhead glinted with a piercing cold light under the dark red sky, much like his gaze at that moment. Looking at Bei Xia, Yi Wuchen wasn't provoked. Instead, he laughed. In that smile, there was contempt, arrogance, and a hint of having victory within his grasp. He chuckled low, reopened his folding fan, and fanned himself unhurriedly. Since this young master dared to come, how could I not know that you, Marquis Howei, and Marquis Qianjue were also present? His triangular eyes narrowed into slits, the light shining through them like a viper's tongue as he looked toward the blazing demon forest and said calmly, "So, naturally, I have prepared some means to deal with you." Before his voice had even faded, rumble. The ground began to tremble. At first, it was just a slight vibration, like someone beating a drum in the distance. But soon, the vibration grew more intense, making the gravel on the ground jump. Then, roar. Roars echoed from the depths of the blazing demon forest. The sounds converged like a landslide, a tsunami, as if the sky were collapsing and the earth was splitting. Qianjue and the others all looked toward the blazing demon forest. In that black sea of forest, trees were falling in large swaths. They weren't being cut down, they were being knocked over. The first to burst out of the tree line was a pack of fire-maned wolves, each the size of a calf, crimson all over, with inextinguishable flames burning on their manes. There were at least 1,000 of them, surging out of the forest like a red river. Close behind were a group of even larger red-armored bears, each 3 zhang tall, covered in dark red shells, leaving deep craters in the ground with every step. They rampaged through, smashing boulders with a single palm strike and snapping thick trees with their charge. Behind them were dense crowds of blazing lizards, fire feather eagles, magma pythons, crimson flame tigers, flying in the sky, running on the ground, countless in number. Their eyes glinted with bloodlust under the dark red sky, foul-smelling saliva dripping from their mouths. Wherever they passed, the earth cracked and vegetation withered. Tens of thousands of fierce beasts poured out of the blazing demon forest like a moving wave of lava. The Qianjue pupils contracted slightly. Wu Haoiwei's round face instantly turned pale. His 200-gene frame instinctively took a step back, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Damn it, even when I faced a beast tide of 10 million on the battlefield back then, I didn't feel this kind of pressure. Beside him, Xuanming's mouth was no longer upturned. The sneer on his face was extinguished as if doused with ice water, replaced by a look of gravity. His right hand tightly gripped the hilt of his 9-ringed great sword, his knuckles turning white. The 9 copper rings on the back of the blade clattered discordantly in the vibrations, sounding like a death knell for the impending bloody battle. His gaze quickly swept across the beast tide. At least 2,000 fire-maned wolves, no fewer than 300 red-armored bears, and countless blazing lizards and magma pythons. In the sky, hundreds of fire-feather eagles and blazing birds circled, each with a wingspan of about a zhang, their claws burning with ghostly blue flames. "Damn it," he growled, a hint of anxiety appearing in his voice for the first time. Bei Xia's complexion also changed. It wasn't fear but anger, the stifled rage of someone who had been played. A tangible fury burned in his phoenix eyes, and the fingers holding his feathered arrow trembled slightly, not from fear, but from sheer exasperation. "Kid!" He suddenly turned his head, his gaze cutting toward Yi Wuchen like a knife, his voice cold enough to freeze. "You dare to trigger a beast tide? Aren't you afraid you'll perish here as well?" Yi Wuchen unhurriedly took a few steps back. His 12 blood guards had already silently surrounded him, protecting him in the center. He smiled slightly at Bei Xia from behind the wall of blood guards. That smile was elegant, composed, and condescending. Since this young master dared to come, I naturally have a way to leave. He lightly waved his folding fan, moving his gaze from xianxia to the crimson flame golden lion jade carriage, then back. As for you all, a flash of cruel delight flickered in his triangular eyes. You should think carefully about how to leave alive. Xuanming's chest heaved violently, the plates of his black iron-heavy armor clanking with his breath. His voice squeezed through his teeth, every word like a poison blade. I'm warning you. If anything happens to the 9th Imperial son or Miss Jiang, the Imperial Lord will surely slaughter your entire Yi family. These words were spoken with such force that even the scorching heat waves in the air seemed to scatter for a moment. But Yi Wuchun only raised an eyebrow. Slaughter the entire Yi family. He repeated those words as if savoring a glass of aged wine. Then he laughed. The laughter wasn't loud, yet clearly reached everyone's ears. He shook his head with a laugh, snapped his folding fan shut, and pointed it at Xuanming. That Di Qingdian. He addressed the Imperial Lord directly by name, his triangular eyes full of blatant provocation. Would he, for a piece of trash like Di Qianjue, he emphasized the word trash heavily, fight my Yi family to the death? His voice suddenly rose, carrying an infuriating arrogance. The current Divine Dynasty is not what it was tens of thousands of years ago. Ever since the top-tier sects and clans broke away, the only power left in the Divine Dynasty consists of first- and second-rate forces, and you all. His gaze swept over the Xuanwu army and the Beihu army, his lips curling into undisguised contempt. An army built on mere numbers. As his voice fell, another tremor shook the ground from the direction of the blazing demon forest. Another wave of fierce beasts rushed out, greater in number and larger in size than the previous ones. One of the magma pythons was 10 zhang long, its body flowing with dark red magma, plowing a deep trench into the ground as it passed. The beast tide drew closer and closer. 2,000 zhang, 1,500 zhang, 1,000 zhang. The earth trembled, the air burned, and the roars of the fierce beasts were deafening. Standing within the protective circle of the blood guards, Yi Wuchun lightly fanned himself with a smile, as if watching a good show that had nothing to do with him. Outside the jade carriage, Di Qianjue had not said a word. He just stood there with his hands behind his back, his starry cloak fluttering slightly in the scorching heat waves. A few strands of hair danced before his calm, water-like face. He felt no anger, no fear, and didn't even knit his brows. His gaze passed over Yi Wuchun, the 12 blood guards, and the tide of tens of thousands of fierce beasts, landing on the distant, blazing demon forest. His eyes were deep and tranquil, as if he were admiring a landscape that had nothing to do with him. He didn't take in Yi Wuchun provocations. He was unmoved by the approaching beast tide. He just stood there quietly. If this had been a few days ago, Di Qianjue would likely have cowered inside the jade carriage to save his own life. But things are different now. He possessed the cultivation of a god king that he could extract at any time. Combined with the imperial clan cultivation methods he practiced and the presence of Marquis Qianjue and the others, while he might not be able to exterminate all the beasts, protecting himself was no problem. Meanwhile, inside the jade carriage, Jiang Lingshan sat by the window. She had heard everything from the moment Yi Wuchun spoke his first word. But she didn't move. It wasn't that she didn't want to move, but rather it wasn't worth moving. Her gaze passed through the crystal window embedded in the jade wall and fell upon Yi Wuchun. Those amber eyes were as calm as water, devoid of anger, disgust, or even a ripple of emotion. It was a kind of indifference, like a human looking at an ant on the roadside. No matter how loudly it clamored, it was still just an ant. Yi Wuchun had told her to come out and meet him. She heard him, but to her ears, those words were no different from the sound of wind blowing through leaves. Then she saw the beast tide. Tens of thousands of fierce beasts surged out of the forest, the earth trembling and the air burning. A slight change finally appeared in her eyes. Not fear, not surprise, but confusion. Why draw out these fierce beasts? She murmured to herself, her voice light and clear, like wind through a bamboo grove. They can't beat me anyway. Jiang Lingshan tilted her head and thought for a moment, but couldn't figure it out. So she stopped thinking about it. She continued to sit by the window, watching the scenery outside, watching the beasts run, the flames burn, and that ant-like person still clamoring. She felt that the world down the mountain was indeed much more interesting than on the island. Outside the jade carriage, atop the back of the chaos dragon turtle, the expression on Xuanming's face had already undergone a storm. From his initial sneer to eyes full of mockery, and then to the solemnity when the beast tide appeared, determination flickered in his eyes. He was Marquis Qianjue, the Iron Wall of the Taisha Divine Dynasty, one of the 5 great war marquises personally appointed by the imperial lord. Even if he were to die today, he could never allow Qianjue to be harmed. He knew in his heart that with his and Xianxia cultivation, even with only 200 cavalrymen by their side, they could fight their way out. But now, having to protect the safety of the imperial son and Jiang Lingshan, he wasn't very confident. Xuanming took a deep breath, the scorching air flooding into his lungs like he had swallowed a mouthful of fire. He turned his head to look at Xianxia, and their gazes met. No words were needed. No discussion was necessary. With nearly 10,000 years of camaraderie, a single look was enough. The two nodded simultaneously. And then, Xuanwu army. Xuanming roared, his voice like a thunderclap. Heir! 100 voices rang out at once, in perfect unison, sounding like a single cry. Form the Iron Wall formation. Protect the Jade Carriage. Yes, 100 Xuanwu army warriors instantly surrounded the Jade Carriage. Dark iron shields appeared in their hands, and the dense array patterns on the shield surfaces lit up simultaneously. Golden light flowed across the shields, forming a translucent light screen. Beihu army. Beixiao's voice was as cold as a blade's edge. Heir! 100 voices rang out at once, as clear as a spring. Knock arrows. Free fire. Not a single vicious beast is allowed within 100 zhang of the Jade Carriage. Yes, 100 Beihu army warriors gripped their hands, and silver-white longbows appeared. They knocked their arrows and drew back. The creaking sound of the bowstrings being pulled back combined into a melody of slaughter. Silver-white light began to condense on the arrowheads. The beast tide had arrived. 800 zhang, 600 zhang, 400 zhang. The ground trembled violently, and the air was thick with the stench of the beasts and the smell of sulfur. The Firemane wolf pack charged at the very front, their crimson fur burning with flames as they ran, looking like a moving sea of fire from a distance. 200 zhang. Fire, Beixia commanded. Swoosh, swoosh. 100 white-feathered arrows were fired simultaneously, tracing 100 silver-white arcs in the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The arrows landed among the wolf pack, and explosions rang out one after another. Each arrow that hit its target exploded into a burst of silver-white light, sending the surrounding beasts flying. Awoo! The dozens of Firemane wolves at the front were blown to pieces, letting out series of miserable howls. However, the wolves behind them continued to charge, treading over the corpses of their companions without slowing down at all. 100 zhang. Fire! Beixiu ordered again. Another volley of 100 arrows was released. This time, the targets are the fire feather eagles in the sky. Over 100 fire feather eagles were shot down, falling from the sky like burning torches. Chirp! High-pitched eagle cries rang out as many fire feather eagles dived from the clouds, their sharp talons burning with ethereal blue flames. 50 zhang. Xuanwu army. Hold fast. Boom! The first wave of vicious beasts crashed into the Iron Wall formation. The sound was like a landslide, like a tsunami, like the sky collapsing. 100 shields simultaneously lit up with blinding golden light as the array patterns operated at full power. The dozens of Firemane wolves at the very front slammed into the light screen and were instantly sent flying, their bones broken and tendons snapped. But the beasts behind them surged forward incessantly, one after another, wave upon wave. The light screen shook violently. Xuanming stood at the very front of the iron wall formation, his 9-ring great broadsword already unsheathed. The 9 copper rings on the blade made a chaotic, jangling sound amidst the roars of the beasts, and the blade shimmered with a blood-like luster under the dark red sky. He swung his blade. Clang! The blade light transformed into a 3-zhang-long blood-colored arc, slicing dozens of charging red-armored bears in half at the waist. Blood sprayed out, splashing onto his dark, iron-heavy armor, only to be shaken off by the array patterns on the armor plates. But his brow furrowed even deeper. Because he could see it, the number of beasts in the tide far exceeded expectations. Every single one had strength at or above the heavenly human realm, and the leaders had even reached the God Monarch or even Divine King realm. Working together, he and Bei Xia could naturally fight their way out. Given enough time, these tens of thousands of vicious beasts would surely be completely annihilated. But now, he had to protect Qianjue and Jiang Lingshan. He also had to guard against the Yi family's 12 blood guards. "Damn it," he growled, swinging his blade again to cleave a lunging, blazing lizard in two. The situation on Bei Xia's side was equally grim. At this moment, he soared into the air, his entire body surrounded by a powerful supreme aura. In an instant, a dense rain of swords appeared in the void, each sword rain imbued with complete laws. Bei Xia shouted sternly, "Exterminate!" Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sky-filling arrow rain, imbued with laws, streaked through the air, forming streaks of white light that bombarded the beast swarm. Bang, bang, bang. Roar! The miserable cries of the beast were drowned out by the explosions, and after performing his divine technique, Bei Xia had already begun close-quarters combat. Wielding a silver tiger-patterned spear, he pierced the throats of fire-maned wolves one by one, causing wolf blood to spray out. But his expression grew increasingly grim. It wasn't because there were too many beasts. It was because Yi Wuchun had not yet moved. Those 12 blood guards were like a flock of vultures waiting for their opportunity. Once he and Xuanming were pinned down by the beast tide, the 12 blood guards would pounce on Qianjue. At that time, the two of them might not be able to intervene in time to save him. Not far away, Yi Wuchun watched their battle quietly, the smile on the corners of his mouth growing wider. The beast tide had completely surrounded the jade carriage. The Xuanwu army's iron wall formation was teetering under the impact of the beasts, and the Beihu army was nearing exhaustion after countless rounds of drawing their bows. Although Xuanming and Bei Xia were brave, they were entangled by tens of thousands of beasts and simply could not pull away. Yi Wuchun saw that the time had come. He slowly raised his hand. 12 blood guards. Here! 12 voices rang out simultaneously, low, cold, and devoid of emotion. Execute di Qianjue. Those 4 words were spoken nonchalantly, as if he were saying, "The weather is nice today." Yes. 12 black shadows moved at once. Their speed was incredibly fast. 12 afterimages flashed through the dark red sky like 12 bolts of black lightning, charging straight for the floorboat. Imperial son. Wu Haoiwei stood in front of Qianjue, his round body completely shielding him. With a wave of his hand, a long axe appeared in his grasp. Despite his cultivation of having only recently entered the God Monarch realm, he showed no fear in the face of the 12 blood guards. Qianjue looked at his back, the corners of his mouth curling up slightly. This fatty was just like before, loyal and true. He glanced at the Divine King realm 9th stage cultivation on his system panel. Just as he was about to claim it, the curtain of the jade carriage moved. Jiang Lingshan walked out of the jade carriage barefoot. Her bare feet stepped onto the deck without making a sound. Her white clothes fluttered gently in the scorching heat waves, and her long hair flew in the wind. There was no expression on her face, and her amber eyes were as calm as water, like someone who had just stepped out of a painting. She glanced at Qianjue, just a single glance. Then, she turned her head to look at the 12 approaching black shadows. The leader of the 12 Blood Guards, that 8-stage supreme powerhouse, had already rushed to within 10 zhang of the jade carriage. In his hand, he held a pitch-black short blade, wrapped in dark red blood qi. The supreme power, unique to supreme realm experts. His target was Qianjue. He intended to slit his throat with one strike and complete the mission. At this moment, he had already rehearsed the trajectory of that strike in his mind. But in the next second, his mind went blank. Because Jiang Lingxian raised her hand. She made no superfluous movements, repeating the same action she had used to annihilate the 32 dark blade outside the island. Her right hand slowly rose from her side, fingers splayed and palm facing forward. With just this raising of her hand, heaven and earth changed color. Rumble, rumble, in the sky above, following a clap of thunder. The dark red sky was instantly obscured by a layer of heavy black clouds. Those clouds arrived without any warning, as if summoned by an invisible giant hand. At this moment, the temperature plummeted below freezing. The moisture in the air instantly condensed into ice crystals, fluttering down in a flurry. Outside the jade carriage, with Jiang Lingxian as the center, a layer of white frost spread in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye. The 12 attacking black shadows simultaneously stiffened. It wasn't that they wanted to stop, but that they had to, because an invisible force, like thousands of unseen threads, had firmly entangled them. That force was cold, domineering, and irresistible, as if the heavenly Tao itself had reached out a hand to pinch 12 ants in its palm. The pupils of the Blood Guard leader contracted violently. He was a powerful expert of the 8th level of the Supreme Realm, a top-tier combatant that the Yi family had spent thousands of years cultivating. He had experienced countless life and death battles and faced enemies much stronger than himself, but he had never felt a force like this. This wasn't a battle. This was a crushing. It was the world crushing down upon ants. Retreat. He had just managed to shout a single word, but Jiang Lingxian's hand simply pressed down gently. Crack! In an instant, the sounds of bones shattering merged into one. The sound wasn't loud, yet it was as clear as if it had rung out right beside the ear. The bodies of the 12 Blood Guards were simultaneously pressed down by that invisible giant force. Bang, bang, bang. Their bodies were like fired cannonballs, plummeting rapidly from the void and smashing into the ground. Screams of agony rang out as blood seeped from their mouths, nostrils, and ears, blossoming into startling flowers of blood upon the white layer of frost. But they were not dead yet. The Supreme Realm Blood Guard leader clenched his teeth, exerting all his strength to try and break free from that force. Buzz! A dark red light erupted from his body, a sign of supreme power operating at full capacity. Dark red blood qi condensed on the surface of his body, attempting to push open the invisible restraint. His eyes were bloodshot, veins bulged on his forehead, and his teeth ground together audibly. He let out a roar, and with the full strength of his body, he finally forced open a sliver of a gap. Using this sliver of a gap, he spun around abruptly and grabbed the dazed Yi Wuchen. Go! He shouted fiercely, and with the last of his strength, he turned into a streak of dark red bloodlight with Yi Wuchen instantly vanishing into the distant horizon. From the moment Yi Wuchen ordered the execution of Qianjue to the moment he was taken away by the Blood Guard leader, only a few breaths had passed. He had originally thought this mission would be extremely easy, but he never imagined that at the critical moment, the disciple of the monarch Xiao would possess such heaven-defying cultivation. Thus, before he could even recover from the shock, he was whisked away by the Blood Guard leader. As for Jiang Lingxian, she glanced at that streak of bloodlight. She did not give chase. It wasn't worth it. She withdrew her hand, letting it hang at her side. On the ground beneath the jade carriage, the corpses of the 11 Blood Guards lay scattered. No, not lying, they were crushed. Their bodies were twisted and deformed, bones shattered and flesh mangled, to the point where they no longer looked human. A heavy scent of blood permeated the air, mixing with the saltiness of the sea breeze, creating a pungent odor that was nauseating. But Jiang Lingshan remained untainted. There was not a speck of blood on her white clothes, nor a grain of dust on her bare feet. She stood there quietly, her long hair flying in the wind and her expression as calm as water, as if nothing had happened just now. She turned her head and looked at Qianjue. Those amber eyes were still clear to the bottom, like lake water holding the entirety of spring. Just now, she tilted her head, a hint of confusion in her tone. Were you trying to do something? Qianjue was also stunned by her cultivation. He had thought Jiang Lingshan cultivation was higher than his own, given she was the disciple of the monarch Xiaoyo. But since obtaining the newbie gift pack, he had thought that if he claimed the God King cultivation, he should be roughly on par with her. But looking at it now, the gap between him and her was like a heavenly chasm. With just one move, she had annihilated 11 in the God realm, and even a supreme could only flee. He silently put away the thought of claiming the Divine King realm cultivation and waved his hand. No, it's nothing. I just wanted to stretch my limbs a bit. Oh, Jiang Lingshan nodded, then asked, then are you still going to stretch your limbs? Qianjue looked at the 11 twisted corpses on the ground, then at the beast tide still charging in the distance, and shook his head. No, I'll pass. I've had enough activity for today. Jiang Lingshan didn't respond, but looked toward the fierce beast still charging in the distance, her gaze suddenly sharpening. Annoying brutes. She tapped her toes lightly and floated up, her body like an arrow released from a bow as she charged toward the beast swarm. Next, giant ice-blue palms appeared in the sky above the distant beast swarm. Bang, bang, bang. As the palm prints fell, the wails of the fierce beasts echoed throughout the blazing demon forest. Although Xuanming and Bei Xia were shocked to see Jiang Lingshan possess such cultivation, they never stopped their slaughter. Now with her joining in, and the Yi family blood guards either dead or fled, the two completely let loose. The battle with the beast tide lasted for nearly 4 hours. After Bei Xia cut down the last fierce beast, he sheathed his blade. His white brocade robe was stained with dark red beast blood, and the killing intent in his eyes had not yet fully receded. He glanced at the corpses strewn everywhere and coldly spat out 2 words, collect cores. The surviving warriors of the Beihu army and Xuanwu army dragged their exhausted bodies and began to extract beast cores from the corpses. Wu Haoiwei remained standing beside Qianjue, his round face full of relief at having survived the disaster, using his sleeve to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. And just then, roar! A beast roar came from the deepest part of the blazing demon forest. That sound was not like the previous chaotic chorus of 10,000 beasts, but a singular, thick sound, like a muffled thunder falling from the 9 heavens. It pierced through the layers of black forest and the scorching heat waves, striking the eardrums of everyone present. That wasn't just a sound. That was pressure. A pressure coming from a crushing difference in life level. Bei Xia's movements froze. His hand holding the long spear stopped in midair, his knuckles turning white. His eyes widened suddenly, reflecting the direction of the depths of the blazing demon forest. There, a ball of ghostly blue light was rising. His Adam's apple bobbed once, and then he roared loudly. Xuanming, take them and leave quickly. Xuanming did not respond. He was also looking at that ball of ghostly blue light. His black iron-heavy armor was covered in beast blood, and the blade of his 9-ring greatsword still had half a beast's intestine hanging from it. But at this moment, he didn't care to wipe it. His hands gripped the hilt tightly, his knuckles making a cracking sound. Old Bei, his voice was hoarse and carried a hint of trembling. Is that? Bei Xia did not answer, because that ball of ghostly blue light was getting closer and brighter. Above the blazing demon forest, the clouds were torn open by that pressure, revealing a huge gap that showed the dark red sky behind. And then, a massive black shadow rose from the forest. It was a beast king, its size like a small mountain.